Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. ESPN 1025 The Game. Caroline Fenton is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how are you?
Fantastic. Max Hers in for Ian this week. How are you, Max?
Excited to be with you guys.
Good. So guess what I did this weekend?
What did you do?
I watched Space Jam.
I actually have never seen Space Jam.
The original one or the Space Jam 2 with LeBron?
Is that one out yet?
So that one just came out. That's what we watched.
Okay,
We
I
watched
have not
that
seen either.
Okay, so let me say this. Space Jam 2 was terrible. It was terrible. I know there are some people... I know there are some people that are saying, it's a kid's movie, it's for kids. And I know there's some people that are saying, well, people just hate LeBron. Nah, it just wasn't very good. But I always thought the first Space Jam was a good kids movie. If you remember the first Space Jam, they had the Monstars. And the Monstars took on Bugs Bunny and that Looney Tunes crew because they stole the power of the NBA players. Now, Caroline, you say you've never watched the original Space Jam. Max, have you seen the original Space Jam?
Of course.
So you know how they steal the powers. Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Grandmama Larry Johnson, Sean Bradley, and Muggsy Bogues. And they steal the powers of these guys, and all of a sudden they can't dribble a basketball. Patrick Ewing doesn't catch the ball when the referee bounces it to him. Charles Barkley gets schooled on the court by a bunch of middle school girls because they lost all of their power, all of their talent. David Poyle running the Nashville Predators reminds me a lot of those guys in the original Space Jam. I know he was the general manager of the year in 2017. I know he's been the general manager since the first day that the Nashville Predators started as a franchise, and yet this weekend was another example over the last 3.5 years of unmitigated, disastrous mismanagement by David Poyle. So what happened this weekend? Well, we talked on Friday. They're going to have to put out the protection list on Saturday. And on Saturday, we got the shocker, the trade of Ryan Ellis. Now, if you've listened to this show, you know me. I didn't want to extend Ryan Ellis in 2018. You know I wanted to trade him. His value was the highest. Picks, prospects, teams would have bent over backwards to give you the world for Ryan Ellis. Instead, you extended him because David Poyle was so committed to these guys, he believed in them. And then Ellis disappointed. The next year in 2019, Jamie Benn embarrassed him in the playoffs. The next year in 2020, he had a decent regular season but didn't do anything at all in that bubble series. And last year, quite frankly, he just wasn't very good. The truth is, David thought he was a horse. In reality, he was kind of a pony. So he trades him. But then you read The Athletic, and they talk about how it wasn't a very good return for Ryan Ellis. We'll get to that later. Then the expansion draft list comes out yesterday. And we debated what seemed to be the only real debate that you would have around here, which was Yarncroke or Sissons. Yarncroke is the better player. He's more experienced. You can play him on a higher line. Sissons has longer term. That's the difference. Who are you going to pick, Yarncroke or Sissons? And you know who David Poyle picked? The fourth line replacement level player who has 15 games under his belt at the NHL level. He is a replacement level player. He's a fourth line guy in Tanner Jeannot. You can just go down to Milwaukee and you can get a guy like that anytime you want. And he protects him. And the truth is with David Poyle, this feels like every move has played out like this since the 2017 Cup run. Remember in 2018, President's Trophy team trade deadlines coming up, they dealt a first-round pick for Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman, whose most notable accomplishment as a Nashville Predator was getting suspended in the first round of that playoff series and was gone before the next year in 2019. Remember when he told us, I'm not going to make any moves for top six forwards because we've got Eeli Tolvanen coming. And then Eeli Tolvanen never cracked the lineup. What about in 2019? The power play was an unmitigated disaster. He traded for Brian Boyle and Wayne Simmons. They were 0 of 15 on the power play in that series against Dallas, and Wayne Simmons was a healthy scratch. But then the answer, signing Matt Duchene, going to trade PK Subban, get nothing in return to clear the cap space to sign Matt Duchene. 8 years, $56 million. Excuse me, I'm sorry. 7 years, $56 million. $8 million a year. 2 years later, he's exposed to Seattle, where he won't go claimed. Everything doesn't seem to be working. Now, I have first guessed most of these moves, including when they got rid of the coach who's been to the Stanley Cup final with 3 teams, and they hired a guy who mostly has success at the minor league level. And now we have Victor Arvidsson telling Adam Vingan, I don't think they used me right. By the way, as I said Friday, there is a growing sense amongst numerous players that I have talked to off the record that they don't really like this coach. Every move David Poile has made just seems to be bad move after bad move. And each one, there comes a narrative of how to explain it. Victor Arvidsson gets traded, and again, I didn't have a problem with that move in and of itself. But the explanation that came out was, well, if we didn't trade Arvidsson today, then we would have lost him in the expansion draft for nothing. But if they had told you then, yeah, we're going to protect Tanner Jeannot, don't you think you would have questioned that narrative a little bit? When I saw Ryan Ellis got traded for a return that most people around the NHL, including Pierre LeBrun at The Athletic, when most people were questioning what the Predators got back, I thought, okay, here's what they did. They traded Ellis because they wanted to get the money off the books, which makes sense anyways. They wanted to get the money off the books, and now they can protect both Sissons and Yarncroke, valuable players for the last 5 years. And what did they do? That third pair defenseman Philadelphia didn't want, Felipe Myers. Well, we got to protect him. But it's okay, because they traded for a guy that Vegas took with the 6th overall pick in 2017, who's never cracked their lineup. Or whoever, I forget which team took him, but he was the 6th overall pick, and they believe in his potential. Again, it is uncharacteristically embarrassing to watch the management of this club. And I feel like I've been a nice guy for a while voicing my opinion that it's time to make a change at the general manager spot. But the protection of Jeannot and the way all of that was handled, again, a 4th-line replacement player who has only got 15 games of 4th-line experience at the NHL level over Calle Yarncroke, who has been a vital contributor for 6 years, is baffling. It doesn't make any sense. Trading Ryan Ellis before the expansion draft and then using his spot to protect a lesser player. What? We talked about it at the trade deadline when everybody said this team needs to sell. It's nice they've turned it around and there's some young guys we like, but they need to sell and they need to get picks and they need to get prospects and they need to build for the future, and they didn't. Because we all knew, Adam Vingan said it, Mark Howard said it, I said it, we all knew they couldn't compete with Carolina or Tampa Bay. And obviously, after seeing what Tampa Bay did, they couldn't. But nope, wanted to give it a shot. Got to give it a shot. Hey, we got to see. Anything can happen in hockey. And what's David Poile telling us now? We need to get younger. We need to competitively rebuild, whatever that means. I just don't understand it. And what I think is so funny, but it really bothers me as a fan of the team, is that with every move that you can easily first guess or second guess or pick it apart however you'd like, there seems to be this narrative every time a move is made that Pred's Twitter runs with as to why this is a good idea. Just like 2 weeks ago when trading Arvidsson and getting less in return than you gave up for 19 goal-scoring Ryan Hartman in the bottom 6 of a bad Chicago team was, well, we would have lost him for nothing. and then you protected a minor league player. Remember when they started the playoff series with Carolina and they put out that tough lineup and now we're going to show them, we're going to go in there and they got out hit and dominated by the Hurricanes? Has David Poile lost his power? The guy that was the general manager of the year in 2017, the guy who at one point maybe still does, has the all-time most wins in the history of the NBA. Has he forgotten how to manage a hockey club? Because all of the evidence says yes. And as I said, I've been nice. I've told you all that if I owned the team, I would have made a change. I decided in February of this year it was time for a change. And once I make a decision like that, I don't go back. It was time for a change. And I said I would have waited till the end of the year, and we would have had a celebration for David, and we would have given him a title and a ceremony. But as far as running the day-to-day operations, or really running anything that has to do with my hockey operations, those days would have been over. I tried to say it with a nice tone. I tried to say it in a, let's celebrate David's legacy and what all he's done and everything. I tried to be nice. They didn't trade at the deadline. I thought that was a big mistake. They decided after the season to tell us, well, we've tried to get high-end forwards. We just can't do it. Right. Well, we hope that Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene can turn it around. You know, at one point, they were pretty good players. We know. And yet, it just seems like every big decision that they make keeps getting botched. They fired Peter Laviolette, a move that a lot of people wanted. They wanted to move on from Laviolette. I was against it. That's fine. They move on from Laviolette, and within less than a day, they hire John Hines to be the coach. And now, less than 2 years later, you've got Victor Arvidsson telling The Athletic, yeah, I didn't believe in the way they were using me. I loved the old coaching staff. I didn't really believe in how they were using me. And I go back to some of the things Poile says. Remember when he told us Arvidsson wasn't healthy enough to play in the Carolina series? Arvidsson told Adam Vingan that he thought he was. There's a huge disconnect. Again, Tanner Jeannot. And if you really believed in Tanner Jeannot, would he have not, I don't know, at some point cracked the roster before they ran out of people and they were just playing any body they could put on the ice because of all the injuries? And he played 15 games. The Predators are obsessed now with Alex Carrier. Oh, yeah, we believe that what Carrier showed us, he was fantastic. He was the best. He played 2 months. But before that, the Predators were never convinced that Alex Carrier was better than Dante Fabro. They were never convinced that he was better than Jared Tenorti. They weren't convinced that he was better than Corbinian Holzer or Matt Irwin or Yannick Weber or anybody else they tried to stuff at the bottom of the defense over the last handful of years. So all of a sudden, they see 2 good months from one guy and they are committed. They see 15 games from a fourth-line replacement level undrafted free agent and they are committed. This is not a well-run hockey team, people. It is not. I can't think of the last move that they made that worked. I cannot think of the last good move that they made where I say, you know what? That's a good move. And by the way, I'm not the only person noticing this. The Predators move on from Ryan Ellis, clear the salary, because they ultimately want to keep Philip Forsberg and they ultimately want to keep Matthias Ekholm. But if you were in this organization that is so willing to move on from guys they commit to, like Shea Weber, like Ryan Ellis, like they're trying to do with Matt Duchene, like they did with PK Subban, wouldn't you sit there and say, I don't know, I think I might go to an organization that actually can look in the mirror and decide whether or not they're good or bad? Guys, we got to wake up here. The management of the hockey club is not competent. I have tried to be nice. I want what is in the best interest of the Nashville Predators. I am a fan. I am a season ticket holder. I love the Nashville Predators. But I want what's in the best interest of their team. And while at the end of the day, maybe Seattle takes Ryan Johansson and everybody's happy, it won't change the fact that every big gamble the Predators have made has ended up blowing up in their face. Just like the one that got Ryan Johansson here, or the $64 million contract that followed. At some point, they got to get something right, and I just don't see it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Your reaction, 615-737-1025 to the moves that were made. And again, I will nitpick the Ellis trade. I'm glad Ellis is gone. I will nitpick the Ellis trade because of when it happened. I mean, you can get a subpar return for Ryan Ellis after the expansion draft. In fact, he's probably more valuable to other teams after the expansion draft because they don't have to use a roster slot to protect him. But no, they got Felipe Myers and a young prospect that at one point was taken high in the 2017. Corey Davis and Mitchell Trubisky were taken high in the 2017 draft too. It's unbelievable. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. And if you think I'm bad, because I know, like, the Predators blogging, Go Team Go, the people that cover the team that just absolutely hate me and whatnot. They'll think anything that I've said is bad. Anything I say about the Predators is just wrong and incorrect, even though I think I've been largely right over the last 3.5 years since the Cup run. Even Robbie Stanley. I mean, I think Robbie's a guy that most people would say, okay, Robbie is mild-mannered. Robbie covers the team every night. Robbie doesn't suck up, but Robbie also doesn't throw people under the bus. Even he today said what's going on right now is not good management.
But now that Sissons is exposed, I feel like Seattle, that's a pretty good deal for them. You've got, 5 years left for Colton Sissons, a little bit over $2 million per year. He's from, Vancouver. There's a local part of that as well. I mean, there's a lot to like about what Colton Sissons brings to the table. Now, if you're the Predators, I feel like if you lose him, you're going to lose him for nothing. And I feel like you could get something for Colton Sissons if you ended up deciding to trade him at some point. To me, unless David Poile just has a very strong feeling that Tanner Jeannot is on the radar for Seattle, this feels like pretty bad asset management to me.
I can tell you Tanner Jeannot was not on the radar for Seattle. When you start a franchise, you're not looking for replacement-level players you can get off the waiver wire on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday. It's bad asset management. And it's time for all of us to wake up. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get Caroline's reaction to all of this coming up next. We'll get your reaction to all of this coming up next. I think there's a much larger story. If you lose Yarncroke or Sissons, it's not the end of the world. But the larger story about the roster management, it's gotten to a point right now where if you let it go on any longer, I'm afraid of how bad it could get around here. 615-737-1025. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman & Company's delivered by TriStar Moving. Plus, why one thing they say and another thing they do really is starting to get to me. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, it's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
When speaking about the leadership now of this group, with a lot of the core now getting shaken up, Pecorino retiring, what do you look to as those guys who are going to stand up as the leaders in that dressing room with so many young faces here in this group now?
Yeah, that's an appropriate and good question, because that'll be something that, for example, I'm having meetings on Monday with our coaching staff. Everybody be in town because of the expansion draft and the entry draft, and I guarantee you that is one of the items on my agenda. It was on the agenda before we traded Ryan, but that again, that's just another guy with Pekka, Arby, and now Ryan out there. We're going to be looking for more guys or different guys or the current guys to take it up a notch, if you will, in their leadership. It's really, really important. And again, when you're making the transition, if you will, to younger guys, that's an area that we have got to make sure that gets covered off, and everybody fits into that, can take on more responsibility. So I'm looking forward to talking to our coaches about this. I spoke with Roman Josi today and about that. I spoke with Roman last week about this, and it's an area that's going to get my full attention.
There you go. Hey, you know what? I've called Roman. You know, we traded Ryan Ellis. We spent the last 4 or 5 years telling you how great of a leader Ryan is, how every time Jared Stillman says something bad about Ryan Ellis, like how he, in the Dallas series, skated around the ice like a goldfish in a fishbowl, just going around doing nothing, about how wrong I am. And now it's like, oh, no, you know what? It's fine. We'll be fine. I talked to Roman. We'll be fine. And one thing that bothers me, as, again, this weekend, it was almost like, Caroline, I felt like I was probably like a pot that had been bubbling over. Mm-hmm. And the protecting of Tanner Jeannot is probably what sent me overboard. Like I've already said, look, if I owned the team, I would have fired David at the end of the year. But I mean, I'd pick up the phone right now and I'd fire everybody in that hockey operation. After I saw that, Tanner Jeannot, I mean, they got to go. They've got to go. That is, again, gets me all worked up. Here's another thing that bothers me, though, is Poyle keeps talking about young players. We want to get younger. So we traded Arvidsson. We traded Ellis. We want to get younger. Remember what happened to Dante Fabro and Eeli Tolvanen in the playoffs? They didn't play. So you want to get younger. You said last year before the start of the season, we want to get younger. Who's out there? Brad Richardson, Eric Halla. Eeli Tolvanen didn't crack the opening lineup. Alex Carrier, Tanner Jeannot, they didn't crack the opening lineup. They only got in there because everybody got hurt. And now it's we got to get younger. We got to get younger. And the coach is playing Ben Harper in the playoffs over Dante Fabro. So they tell you one thing and then they do the other. And that's why the players are getting fed up with the coach. That's why Arvidsson is telling you, I didn't like how they used me. The other staff loved him. This staff didn't like how they used me. They're telling us one thing. Arvidsson is hurt. Arvidsson tells The Athletic, no, I was good enough to play. They keep telling us one thing and then going out and doing another. I mean, I still cannot get over what we're witnessing right now with the management of this club. Like when the Titans make a decision, sometimes I'll disagree with it, but like I'll understand it. I liked Dennis Kelly. You want to cut Dennis Kelly so you can sign a right tackle, pay him less money, and then go get another DB? Okay, I understand what you're doing. If you cut Dennis Kelly to keep Khalif Raymond, I don't understand what you're doing. But the Titans have some faults of their own, no doubt, but they are run with at least an ounce of confidence and competence. I mean, this is, we had to trade Arvidsson or else we'd lose him. They protected Tanner Jeannot. We're not rebuilding. We're competitively rebuilding. The message is just all over the place. It's all narrative spinning, and it's all ultimately, I just feel like it doesn't put the hockey team in a position to have success.
I will reiterate what I said on Friday, that if you looked at the Victor Arvidsson trade as an isolated incident, it makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, trade Victor Arvidsson so you can get some return for him, get that money off of your cap. It made sense. But it's not a string of isolated incidences. It's a narrative. It's a story. It's a book that every single chapter has a different story and characters because it doesn't make sense. You say that you want to competitively rebuild, but 3 months ago at the trade deadline, you wanted to go for it. And it makes you, I feel like these decisions being made are made right now, and then next week we'll change our mind about it. Next week we have a different idea of how we want to take the team. So I'm a little bit confused about why the mind was changed, why the decision to make certain decisions and certain moves at the trade deadline are different now.
They keep taking bad players, too, and they keep trying to tell us, well, we hope for a bounce-back year from this guy. And it's like, what? Like when Ryan Hartman was acquired, he had 19 goals in one season at Chicago. He was a bottom six forward. And they had Tracy Myers on, who covers the Blackhawks for NHL.com on Preds Insiders after they made the trade. And she was like, oh, yeah, he had burned his last bridge with Joel Quenneville. They were ready to get rid of him. And the Predators gave up a first-round pick. And the Preds were like, oh, no. David Poile was like, no. We don't think he's reached his potential. He was terrible. They gave up on Kevin Fiala. He's gone somewhere else and played better. At some point, the bad decisions have to stop. And when you protect a replacement-level player, that's what Jeannot is. That's what everybody here views him as. That's what everybody across the league views him as, a replacement-level player. A guy that you can go to Milwaukee and grab up and put on your fourth line and not get embarrassed with. You know what's funny is I kept saying when I watched Jeannot play, and I like Jeannot, this is not a knock on him, but he's a fourth-line guy. He's a fourth-line replacement-level Milwaukee guy. But when he came up, I said, you know what's funny? They paid Austin Watson, a couple $1 million or whatever it was, like $1 million, something, $1.5 million, to have him up here to do the exact same thing. You don't need to pay Austin Watson to do that. You don't need to maybe burn some of the currency that you did when you decided to stand by Austin Watson through everything. You didn't have to do that because he's a replacement level player. You know how Austin Watson ended up in the rotation on the Predators because one night they went to Detroit and everybody got food poisoning and they had to call a slew of guys up from Milwaukee, and he played well. And he kept playing well, and so he was there for the Cup final run. He kept doing the same fourth-line things, and then eventually they moved on from him. And then Tanner Jeannot was in the ECHL to begin this season, and all of a sudden everybody got hurt, so they called him up, and he played okay in 15 games, and now you're telling me you have to trade Victor Arvidsson because God forbid you lose that guy? When I was a kid, the Atlanta Braves had a player named Charles Thomas, who for about 2 months in 2004 saved their 14 straight division title streak. This Charles Thomas was not a prospect on Baseball America, was not a high draft pick. I think he was an undrafted free agent, and he just hit it really well in AAA. They called him up, and for like 2 months, Charles Thomas was batting in front of Chipper Jones and saving that team. And at the end of the year, because the Braves knew what he was, a replacement level player, they traded him in a deal that landed Tim Hudson. And they had Tim Hudson at the top of their rotation for 8 years. A year after they traded Charles Thomas, guess where Charles Thomas was? The Sounds. Because he's a replacement level player. You got to know your organization. And sometimes I watch these moves Poile makes, and I wonder how much scouting he does of his own guys outside of watching the games like I do. I watch all the games. I've seen those 15 games from Tanner Jeannot. I saw the 2 months of Alexander Carrier. I think Alexander Carrier's got a shot. I'm not willing to commit the farm to him. But every big move, the Duchesne contract, I've been over this time and time again. And I think you can back me up on this one. Mm-hmm. There was, at one point, this was something I said about 4 or 5 months ago. There was somebody in my life at one point that all of my friends kept thinking, why are you obsessed with them? Not really all that smart, funny, interesting. Like they had their qualities, like they were okay. But I was just so immersed, just so into it. And then after a while, I kind of realized, maybe that person wasn't the best for me. Maybe all of my friends were right. David Poile goes on a 3-year conquest to get Matt Duchesne, sells the farm in order to do it, signs him, And now 2 years later, this guy that you spent 3 years chasing after doesn't want anymore? What? Like, seriously, what? You want to get younger, and so you put Dante Fabro on the bench? Save their season. Poyle may not even have a job if it's not for Ellie Tolvanen right now. And I go, put him on the bench. We want to get younger, but we're going to put them all on the bench. It's just, it does feel very like, we just say what everybody wants to hear, and then when it doesn't work out, we raise our hands and say, how are we supposed to know? When it's very easy to first guess this stuff. I'm tired. Everybody probably thinks it's fun to get to play armchair coach and armchair general manager, and honestly, it kind of is. But when you're doing it all the time and you're more successful than the actual people that are running the team, and you don't know as much as they do, you don't have the experience they do, you don't have any of that, and yet you're more right than they are, it really starts to become obnoxious. And it really starts to burn because I'm a fan like everybody else. And it's just starting to be too much for me.
I'm wondering, what am I missing about Tanner Jeannot? Is there something that I am missing?
I don't think, this is just me. I don't know what David Poyle sees. I don't. And that's what makes this really hard, is that I don't, the idea of what are you missing on Tanner Jeannot? He's an undrafted free agent that they signed who's worked his way up. He's a hard worker. He's a fourth-line guy. He's willing to put his body on the line. He made some fun plays at the end of the year last year. He's the kind of thing that a fan would say, I love this guy. But you don't win. Look at Tampa Bay's roster. You don't win Stanley Cups because of Tanner Jeannot. And I think that is where, again, I use the word competence because I see a lot of incompetence when it comes to this. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your reaction next. Caroline says it is popping, and I don't doubt it. 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. By the way, big win for Nashville SC. Mukhtar had a hat trick. I mean, they just absolutely rolled on Chicago on Saturday night. Nashville SC joined ESPN 94.9 tonight from 7 to 8 for NSC Backstage, featuring Nashville SC players and coaches. Tonight's guest is assistant coach Steve Guppy. Watch the show online via 1025 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and theGameNashville.com. NSC Backstage brought to you by Camarena Tequila, the official tequila of Nashville SC.
What did you think? Oh,
I was kind of surprised.
I saw you tweet that yesterday. Yeah, I was like, oh gosh,
I know it's got to stop. It's at some point, like it's been too much. No, I didn't even consider it. And if anyone out there claims that they saw Tanner Jeannot being protected coming, then I want you to show some receipts. I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either. And I couldn't believe it yesterday when I saw that news. Like, I get pretty worked up, and I think if you look at my Twitter, like it was pretty worked up when that came out. I think I had like a 5-series tweet storm about why everything that we're looking at with the Predators is just absurd right now. But that was the one that got me. I texted you about it. I texted Ryan about it. I texted Adam Vingan about it. I texted Joe Rexford about it. I texted Robbie Stanley about it. I texted everybody. By the way, when the Predators made the Ryan Ellis trade, I texted Robbie Stanley. This is the same thing I did. I was on a flight going to Washington, D.C. with my dad in 2019 when they traded PK Subban and they got a couple of players. I think it was Jeremy Davies and Steve Santini and a couple of picks in return for PK Subban. I'm like, are these players any good? And Robbie was like, no. And so I texted Robbie when they made this trade with Ryan Ellis, and I said, are these players any good? And Robbie said, no. And so, again, I saw Chase tweet out the other day, they should trade Fabro to Seattle to get him to take Duchesne. And I'm thinking, so you're going to give up on PK Subban, Victor Arvidsson, Dante Fabro, Ryan Ellis, and Matt Duchesne and get nothing in return for it. And I think there's some people that think, yeah, you know what? That's probably the best thing. What? Like, what? So, I mean, again, I've been saying it for the last 40 minutes. I've been saying it's time for it. Someone tweeted and said, breaking news, Jared, someone wants to fire somebody. I don't think I've hit how I feel about David Poile. I don't think I've hit that. I don't think that's any new development. I think, though, the Tanner Jeannot on the protected list is the straw that broke the camel's back. Because to me, it's not defensible.
Tanner Jeannot, Adam Vingan wrote a piece in The Athletic talking about why they protected each player. But Tanner Jeannot, they said the Predators love his size. They believe he can be an impactful player.
Notice how
is he the only guy in the NHL that is big and can be an impactful player?
Notice how Adam said they think.
Yes.
They think.
They believe he can be an impactful player for the foreseeable future. That is from Adam's piece in The Athletic.
Adam is doing what I did that time on NHL Network when I said the Predators think if they can win Game 6, then they can go to Carolina and win Game 7. I'm not saying I think that.
That's what they think.
I'm saying that's what they think. Text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Phone 615-737-1025. Caroline, what we got?
Sam texts in and says, I think I've been holding out thinking things will get better, but it's hard to argue anything you just said about Poile. The team is on a downward spiral, and Poile is accelerating that with every decision he's made since 2017.
It's kind of like this discussion I brought up with Mark Howard last week and it was, did the team do a decent enough job of giving Pekka a chance to win? And the more I think about it, the more I believe that Pekka made everybody look better. He made everybody on this team and in this organization look better. I mean, the other thing, too, about Poile that no one wants to bring up, because it did feel like the right move at the time, albeit not for me, but for a lot of people. Have you noticed that Barry Trotz left here and has done nothing but win at an incredibly high level since then? And you have John Hines as your coach? Like, you see what Barry Trotz is doing. And this was a guy that David Poile gave up on in Barry Trotz. That was amicable, and I thought it was classy in how they handled it. But at some point, we need to look at the glow-up of Barry winning the Stanley Cup and taking an average Islanders team deep into the playoffs 3 years in a row and say, maybe David wasn't the problem, or maybe Barry wasn't the problem, David. Maybe he wasn't the problem. And you know me, I think Laviolette's a great coach. And I see John Hines, and I guess I just kind of struggle with it a little bit about where they are. What else we got?
Michael from Missouri texts in and says, I can't defend the Tanner Jeannot decision, so let's just leave that aside. This is just a theory. Do you think that trading Arvidsson and Ellis could be about getting bigger as much as the moves were about shedding cap?
I think
that's what David Poile said.
I think it's about getting less injured. Those guys get injured because they're little. And as Floyd used to always say, when the going gets tough, the big good guys are better than the little good guys. And there is no sport where that is more true than hockey. that the big good guys are better than the little good guys, and those two guys have gotten hurt a lot. Look, I mean, I think we can all admit, Caroline, you've worked here for 4 months. I think we can all admit I'm the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to wanting to get rid of Ryan Ellis. That has been nothing new for me.
I didn't have a problem with getting rid of Ryan Ellis.
No, he's incredibly overrated, overpaid, overhyped, overcelebrated. I'm glad he's gone. But the manner in which they did it, not waiting until after the expansion draft to see what teams would be willing to give up for Ryan Ellis, considering that they wouldn't have to protect him, which would then almost allow somebody to sweeten the pot a little bit, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. For two guys that you read The Athletic, say, these guys aren't very good. Robbie Stanley says, these guys aren't very good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't get worked up over acquisitions the Preds make on guys I've never heard of. I did that one time when they acquired Mikhail Granlund for Kevin Fiala, and everybody told me Granlund was this great player, and it took Granlund 2 years before we ever saw a hint of it. And now, by the way, he's a free agent. And I keep wondering, if you're Ekholm or Forsberg, and you're reading the room, and they call you in 9 days and say, hey, we'd like to sign an extension, do you not look at them and say, so I can play with Tanner Jeannot? Like, that's why you want me to sign a contract extension so I can play for a coach that half the team doesn't even like? I mean, I've told you, I know what I am to that organization and that team and the city. I know what I am. And while sometimes I think, some people are going to disagree with this, sometimes I think it is unjust in the anger that people sometimes present towards me, or they think I'm some anti-team guy when really I'm a big fan of both teams. That's just what people think. Mm-hmm. So when people are reaching out to me and explaining how there is a handful of guys on this team that absolutely cannot stand this coach, and then Arvidsson basically tells Adam Vingan that in The Athletic, that's kind of an issue when you're trying to re-sign Forsberg and Ekholm, right? Like, that these guys are going to say, like, wait a minute, I've seen you ship off everybody that didn't have a no-movement clause. Shea Weber, gone. PK Subban, gone. Ryan Ellis, gone. Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, trying to get rid of them. I'm not doing this now unless you give me that no movement clause, and I'm not doing it with this coach, and I'm not doing it, if you're going to keep protecting Tanner Jeannot. I'd worry about that.
And you mentioned Mikhail Granlund being a free agent and not doing anything with him at the trade deadline. And it goes back to my point
Two trade deadlines in a row.
It goes back to my point of a lot of the Predators' decisions, even since I have started covering this team for 4 months, they don't make sense because you don't do anything with Mikhail Granlund at the trade deadline, and now he's a free agent, and you will get nothing for him in return, while the Predators just traded Victor Arvidsson so they could get a return. They wouldn't lose him for nothing.
Yes.
Well, you're about to lose Mikhail Granlund for nothing.
And
so it's a string of incidences that just don't match up.
Well, people will say, well, they want to keep Granlund, and they're going to work out a deal with Granlund after the draft on Wednesday. And let me ask you this question. You're Mikhail Granlund. Mm-hmm. You love everything about the Predators. You love John Hines. You love David Poile. You want to come back. You want to... Somebody offers you $6 million.
I mean, that depends on wherever his motivation is. But me, if you're going to pay me $6 million, I'm going where I'm getting paid $6 million.
And that's how free agency works. So Granlund is not on the team. Okay? For everybody out there, he's not on the team. So they didn't trade him because they want to keep him. He's not on the team. He is free to sign with anybody. More of your reaction next. 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman & Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. Again, the expansion draft Wednesday. I don't know who they'll take. It's either going to be Sissons or Yarncroke. There's all these people out there that are thinking to themselves, maybe they'll take Duchesne. No.
I've heard Yakov Trenin as well as a name thrown around as someone they may take.
Fourth liner, scored 5 goals last year. Woo!
Woo-hoo.
This Wednesday, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game this Wednesday night, you win a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Call in this Wednesday morning at 9:45 during Robbie and Rex Road. And let me just say this, Haney Mukhtar might be the easy pick for that one. Hat trick on Saturday night. Okay, Caroline, back to the phones again as we are discussing the incompetence of what we are seeing at times from how the Predators are running their hockey operations. Go ahead.
Nate texts into the text line and says, could Sissons and Yarncroke be unprotected because they struck a deal with Seattle and they didn't need to protect them?
I mean, maybe. But then why would you, if you struck the deal with Seattle, why would you need to protect anybody? So why would you protect Jeannot? I mean, in all seriousness, like, if I'm Sissons, and I've said this before, and I truly believe this, like, it depends on who you're playing over me. If I'm Case Keenum, and I go to training camp, and Patrick Mahomes is the starting quarterback, I understand my role as the backup. If I'm Case Keenum, and you want to play Luke Falk over me, I got a problem with that. Like, that's kind of how that works out. Like, I think Gardner Minshew is still in Jacksonville, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But let's just say that if Gardner Minshew is in Jacksonville, and, we'll use Nick Foles then as the example. Mm-hmm. I'm Nick Foles. I'm on the Eagles. You used a first-round pick on Carson Wentz. He's your starting quarterback. I get it. I'm the backup. But then when I go to Jacksonville and you put somebody that I think stinks ahead of me in Gardner Minshew, I'm not going to be very happy about it.
Gardner Minshew is still in Jacksonville.
Okay. And you know what? He's going to understand Trevor Lawrence playing ahead of him. Mm-hmm. What he's not going to understand is if Jake Fromm were to be playing ahead of him. That he'd have a problem with. That's why I said with Dante Fabro, him being in the lineup is one thing, but him not being in the lineup in favor of Eric Goodbranson or Ben Harper, that is something that would alienate a player. And I wonder how Sissons and Yarncroke will feel, because one of them's coming back, how they will feel when David Poyle has to explain to him, we still love you, we still believe in you, even though we put that fourth line Tanner Jeannot, no talent, undrafted free agent guy who didn't help us get to a cup final and didn't help us win a President's Trophy and hasn't been productive for the last 5 or 6 years. We protected that guy because we believe in him more than you. But we still love you, baby. I mean, if you don't think that's going to be a problem, I got another thing coming for you. And again, let me couch how it is. I am informed enough to know that there is discontent with the players and the coaching. That's all I'll say. Now, how much of the players? I don't know. Now, I haven't asked every player. I don't know. I know what Arvidsson said. I know what I've heard. And I know what I've heard about Hines in New Jersey. So I'll be a little worried right now. I mean, look, I think that the truth is Predator fans need to wake up. And they need to look at how this organization is being run. And every hockey decision is like there's a giant layer of hope in there, which is, yeah, we know that Vegas didn't really want Cody Glass anymore, but he was a high pick, so we hope that one day he'll play like the high pick that we thought he was. Okay, great. Okay, that works for you. What else we got?
CC texted in the text line and said, I question trading a Norris Trophy winner PK Subban and expecting Fabro to step right in and be effective. Hopefully Fabro was protected to be used in a trade with Duchesne or Johansson like the team did with Seth Jones.
Okay, so here's what you're telling me then. If you want to do that, you are then, and let's say it's Johansson. It could be Johansson or it could be Duchesne. You're going to use the 3rd pick in the draft or 4th pick in the draft or whatever it was on Seth Jones. Flip him for Johansson. Then get rid of that guy after giving him $50 million. You're going to then get rid of him. And you're going to trade your first-round pick in 2016 in Fabro, who you felt good enough about trading Sam Girard for because you thought he could step in and play. And you're trading Ellis, Arvidsson, and everybody for nothing in return. That's what you're telling me. That is terrible asset management. If you had a stockbroker and every stock that they convinced you to buy went down, you would fire your stockbroker. You would say that is enough. But think about the stock of all these guys. Sam Girard's stock, he got traded from here. Second round pick, up in Colorado. Kevin Fiala, first round pick in 2014. He was ahead of Dylan Larkin. His stock in Minnesota, up. You trade for Kyle Turris, down. Ryan Hartman, down. Wayne Simmons, healthy scratch in the playoffs, down. Ryan Johansson, sign him to an 8-year contract, down. Matt Duchene, down. Ryan Ellis, you could have gotten the Hall of all halls in 2018 if you had traded him before they had entered training camp that year. If you had said, hey, we wanted to keep Ryan, but a business decision is just very tough. We believe in him. We trust him. We're going to miss him. But we got 2 prospects and 2 picks in return. Down. The stock of all these guys, it's all going down. And you can't win that way. That is very poor commodities broking. Brokerage. Brokering, whatever. It's bad stock brokering. It's bad. And I've been nice about it. Seriously, you've been here now a couple times and I've gotten mad about David Poyle doing stuff and saying that it's time for a change, which it is in fact time for a change. And I feel like I've been very nice. You want to compare this to how I used to talk about Kevin Stallings or Ken Wisenhunt? It is not in the same zip code. And I do believe that David Poyle has done enough to earn our respect, and he's in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, and why he and Jeff Fisher are in there and Floyd's not, I'll never understand, but that's, I guess, a discussion for a different day. But, look, enough is enough. This is the way that you all should feel as fans. This is our team, okay? This is our team. They tried to take our team from us and send them to, Hamilton, Ontario. It's our team. And I don't get this. I don't get how just all these bad moves can be made. And you don't see Adam Vingan writing about how it's time to make a change there. And you don't see Joe Rexrode writing how it's time to make a change there. And I don't know what it is. But I don't understand how you can defend what we're watching right now. I don't see it. I do not see how you can defend it. And I think that bothers me just as much. By the way, Delaney Walker had some interesting comments. We will get back to Poyle. We will get back to your reaction. We will get back to the Predators. But I can't do 4 hours of crying about the Predators today. I just cannot do it. It's summer. Everybody loves summer. Delaney Walker had some comments that apparently got everybody all bent out of shape. Now, I've talked to Delaney today. But, we'll hear what Delaney had to say, and we'll discuss it next. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. SEC Media Days kickoff today. Chase McCabe hanging out in the Hoover. We will talk to Chaser later this hour. We have got a lot of stuff to get into. So, Caroline, I like to feel like I'm plugged in, you know, with everything going on with the Titans, the Predators, the SEC, the teams that we cover that the fans like. Mm-hmm. There may be something that goes on. I get it all the time on Twitter. Well, I'll watch an NBA game in the playoffs, and I'll be like, how did this guy end up on that team? And people will be like, you're so dumb. You do sports for a living, and you forgot that Doc Rivers got fired from the Clippers and is now in Philadelphia. My bad. But I try to be pretty plugged into everything that goes on here. And so sometimes I see stuff and I think, like, what? And I saw something this week scrolling on my phone about, here are the comments that Delaney Walker made that got everybody all worked up. Now, let me say this. I've talked to Delaney today, and I didn't ask Delaney to clarify his comments because when I heard them, it made sense to me. But I was just talking to Delaney today, and Delaney has never been one to sugarcoat things. And we've done some Q&As for Pepsi before, and honestly, you know, there were some things he said that I'm like, whoa, that's a take. But then again, I'm sure there are a lot of things that I've said that people have thought, whoa, that's a take. So I'm not going to knock the guy one way or another. But apparently people are really worked up about what Delaney Walker had to say. So I took the bait. I listened to what he had to say. This was on Sirius XM Radio. Here's what Delaney Walker said. They got everybody all worked up.
I want to win a Super Bowl, honestly. I feel like that helps you in your status as you retire in this game, and it's sad that that's something that you got to have to be recognized sometimes. And again, me being in Tennessee, I hate to say this, that hurts my value in any type of awards or accolades because I did play in Tennessee. And you can look at some of the greats like Eddie George, Steve McNair, and them guys just not getting them coached yet. And it's because they didn't win a Super Bowl and they played in Tennessee. So I look at it, if I can win a Super Bowl, maybe that'll help me and see if we can go from there.
And that's bad because why? I don't get it. People get all worked up about what he said. And I don't understand how you can get worked up. You do know that when I was in college in 2009, the Titans had a Sunday night football game at home against Indianapolis. They did not have a Sunday night football game again. The sports premier primetime game. They did not have a Sunday night football game until December of 2018. Think about that. That is 9+ years.
That's insane.
In between having a Sunday night football game. The Green Bay Packers get 4 a year. Even when they're not good, the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles get Sunday night football games. The Titans every year get one Thursday night game, and if they were decent the year before, they get a Monday game or 2 Monday games, and maybe get a Sunday night game every now and then. I mean, the fact that they got a Sunday night game this year, I am floored by. Didn't have a Sunday night game last year. I mean, the truth is, Nashville is considered a small NFL market. And it's weird because people hear the term small market, and they think to themselves that means small city. That's not really true. Houston is a small NFL market. It's not a small city. Mm-hmm. Indianapolis is a small market. It's not a small NFL city. They had Peyton Manning. Green Bay's not a small NFL city.
Is a small NFL city.
But it's not a small, like it's a small market in general. It's like the smallest market in all of pro sports. But it's not a small NFL city.
Yes.
Like Green Bay moves the needle. I don't get, what am I missing? What did Delaney Walker say that was so bad? Now, I'm just going to say it like this, and I like Delaney. But Delaney is not going to go to the Hall of Fame. And Delaney's not going to go to the Hall of Fame, not because Delaney wasn't a good player, but he's not going to go to the Hall of Fame because he was not a Hall of Fame player. But I would argue this. Edgerrin James, look at his numbers and compare it to Corey Dillon's. And Corey Dillon has more yards, and Corey Dillon, I believe, it's either has a lot more touchdowns and the same amount of yards or the same amount of touchdowns and a lot more yards, but they each have a Super Bowl. But Corey Dillon did all of that at noon on CBS in markets that none of us got. And Edgerrin James played with Peyton Manning at 3:30 or Monday night or Sunday night or Thursday night for everybody to see. It does matter. I just don't see what Delanie Walker said unless you are just so sensitive that the idea that your NFL team that is treated like a small market team, that your NFL team doesn't get the respect we deserve unless you're so sensitive. I don't know how you can hear Delanie Walker's comments and think of it as, I can't see how you can look at that for 1 second and find that to be controversial. The Titans have played in the playoffs now, I believe, in 3 of the last 4 years, which is the first time they were in the playoffs in a decade, right? Do you know when their time slots have been for when they've played? They played on ESPN against Kansas City, which is the ESPN playoff game is always the worst game.
Right.
You know, it's not the broadcast television game, CBS, Fox, NBC. They played on ESPN the first year. They played on CBS's primetime game against Tom Brady and the Patriots in the second year. And they played on ESPN in the third year. It ain't you that got Jim Nantz and Tony Romo for that Patriot playoff game. It was Brady and Belichick. I don't get it. I love Nashville. I grew up here. I've chosen to live here. Many of you all remember, back in the day, I had a choice of being here, and I chose to be here. Like, let's be real. Delanie Walker's not wrong. Steve McNair, Eddie George, those guys do have debatable NFL Hall of Fame careers. They're never going to get in. In 2000, Derek Mason set the NFL record for all-purpose yards in a single season. At one point, Derek Mason was a top 5 receiver and the best punt and kick returner in the NFL. He was a good player for over a decade. And Derek Mason's not going to get into the Hall of Fame. Put Derek Mason on the Cowboys, I think you have a much different argument. So, the question I'm asking is, I heard Delanie's comments. I get it. He's not saying I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer if I played for the Cowboys. He didn't say that. He said my chances of making the Hall of Fame would be better for winning a Super Bowl would be better if I won a Super Bowl because the years that I was one of the best tight ends in the game, I played in Nashville. I played on bad Tennessee Titan teams with bad coaches. I don't disagree with any of that. So what am I missing?
So, well, and I think also, too, people always talk about, Ryan Tannehill's disrespected. Yeah, I think that goes kind of along the same line. That Ryan Tannehill does kind of feel disrespected if you're looking in the grand scheme of a national media conversation. But, I mean, that's just... This is just par for the course.
Let me ask you this question. If Ryan Tannehill is on the Dallas Cowboys or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Green Bay Packers or the San Francisco 49ers or the Denver Broncos, you think he's left outside of the top 10 list of NFL best quarterbacks?
No. Look at Tony Romo.
Tony Romo's an average quarterback.
He was, yeah. I mean,
you know what? I'll say this about Dak Prescott. And I like Dak Prescott. I do. I mean, I was one that thought when Dak went in the 4th round, I was like, what am I missing? I think Dak's a pretty good quarterback. And Floyd and I used to argue it. I thought Dak's pretty good. Dak's fine. But Dak is treated as if he is Mahomes. I think
I think that Dak is a top 10 quarterback in the league.
He's fine.
I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers.
Dak's fine.
Yeah.
But he ain't Deshaun Watson. He is not as good as Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. He is not as good as Patrick Mahomes. He is not as good as these young quarterbacks, but they put him in the category. And Dak throws for a lot of yards because his team sucks so bad. They're always losing, so he's got to throw a bunch. Mm-hmm. But, you turn on the TV, you'd be convinced Dak is in that group. They put Dak on TV every week. Dak's on every commercial. Yogurt and mattresses and, all kinds
some sort of soup stuff, too.
All kinds of crap. and that's Dak Prescott because he's on the Dallas Cowboys. Donovan McNabb was an average quarterback. He was good. He got to a Super Bowl, but, Rex Grossman got to a Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb was a good quarterback. And when Donovan played, he was in every commercial. And he was talked about on every show. People forget when ESPN thought it would be a good idea, and it's crazy to think what ESPN is now. ESPN at one point thought it would be a good idea to put Rush Limbaugh on their ESPN countdown show.
Oh, man.
And it didn't take long for Rush to do something Rush and get fired from the show. Which, again, considering what we see now on ESPN compared to the idea of putting Rush Limbaugh, I think it's pretty amazing. But, so, it was about Donovan McNabb. Because everybody had talked about Donovan all the time. I was a Titan fan in middle school. And I'm like, Steve McNair's way better than him. But they didn't talk about Steve McNair. So, this is what happens when you're on that kind of team, is you don't get the respect you deserve unless you are an undeniable superstar player. Larry Fitzgerald is going to the Hall of Fame no matter what team he played on. J.J. Watt the same way. But it does matter. There is a big difference between lighting it up in Green Bay and being Corey Dillon in Cincinnati.
Do you think that's something that can change?
Yes, but it changes like in weird ways. Like, I'm not sure it will ever change for Tannehill, but if the Titans were to draft like a young superstar quarterback who became, the league MVP, then yeah, I think it changes. Then I think you're on 3:30 every Sunday. Market size in the NFL, fan size is probably the way you should say it more than market size. Kansas City, not the biggest market in the world. They have just unbelievable fan support.
Foxborough, not that big.
Yeah,
I understand that it's New
Boston.
England, but
it's Boston. But I think that ultimately, if you are a star player in that sport, it's not basketball where the star players run everything, but it matters. It matters. Vince Young, I think, was a lot like this, where Derrick Henry, I believe, and I get what they're doing. But Mahomes was on the cover of Madden a couple of years ago. Brady was on the cover of Madden a couple of years ago. And they're both on it this year. And I think it's a little ridiculous. Derrick Henry should be on the cover of Madden football. He ran for 2,000 yards last year. But he's not. But when Vince Young was on the Titans, Heisman Trophy winner, or not Heisman Trophy winner, national championship winner, should have won the Heisman Trophy over Reggie Bush, maybe, I don't know. Big controversy, big star player, big star school at Texas. Vince Young moved the needle. He was Rookie of the Year and on the cover of Madden. Vince Young, had Vince become what it looked like Vince was going to be, then the Titans would have been at 3:30 and on Monday Night Football and on Sunday Night Football because people want to watch Vince Young. So, yeah, you can have that. But, again, to look at what Delaney Walker said and to get worked up over, oh, my God, how dare Delaney disrespect now? What? Because that's not what I heard. 615-737-1025 will get your reaction on the Delaney Walker comments. And I'm sorry, but if you are offended by what Delaney Walker had to say, you're soft. You are soft. I was a fan of the Titans when they made it to the Super Bowl and the next season were kicking off at noon with the CBS F team of Solomon Wilcots and Ian Eagle. I remember those days. As I used to always say, Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta are the official Sunday broadcasters of the Tennessee Titans. I wet my pants every time they get Jim Nantz and Tony Romo because I'm like, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And when they get on Sunday Night Football, oh my goodness, I can't believe it literally cannot. I almost combust because they're the Titans. They never are on Sunday Night Football. They're going to have 2 Sunday Night Football seasons in a row. Unbelievable. So if you got a problem with what Delaney Walker said, you do not understand reality, and you're soft. 615-737-1025. We're live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman and Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
You know, I find it so interesting, and I love the honesty. In what way will it help you, other than legacy, which I think we all understand? But Delaney, in fairness, you know, outside of the quarterback position, Julio Jones may retire without a Super Bowl. We're not going to look at him any differently. You know what I mean? So what? In what way do you think it helps you? Why are you so motivated by just that?
Well, you say Julio, but he played in Atlanta. Look at Atlanta and their fan base. Look at the type of players that played in Atlanta, and look where they at. And when I say when you play in an organization like Nashville, it's because it's so small. Our fan base is not as great as some of these organizations that other players that play that they're great in them organizations. They get them accolades. But when you play in Tennessee, not a lot. You don't get primetime games. You don't get a lot of people seeing your games, so you don't get mentioned a lot. So sometimes you don't get brought up in these conversations. But when you have a Super Bowl ring, they bring you up in these conversations.
Can't take away a Super Bowl. That was Delaney Walker on Sirius XM Radio. And again, I don't have any problem with what Delaney Walker said about anything. He's right. The Titans don't get a ton of primetime games. The Titans don't get a ton of respect. Derrick Henry was the league's rushing champion and annihilated Bill Belichick and the Patriots and rolled through Lamar Jackson, the league MVP and the best team in the NFL in 2019 in the Ravens. And he was ranked behind Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara and Ezekiel Elliott entering last season on the NFL ESPN top 10 list. Ryan Tannehill did not crack the top 10 list. He was a Pro Bowler in 2019, the comeback player of the year, and last year just missed out on making the Pro Bowl with Deshaun Watson ahead of him. Oh, and by the way, Deshaun Watson plays in Houston, and Deshaun Watson gets the attention. Star quarterback in college, star quarterback in the NFL, and if Tannehill's on the Dallas Cowboys, if Tannehill's on the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Tannehill's on the Denver Broncos, or the San Francisco 49ers, or the Oakland Raiders, or the Philadelphia Eagles, or either team in New York, or the Chicago Bears, who they cannot get off my TV fast enough, if he's the quarterback for any of those teams, he's in the Pro Bowl and he's on the top 10 list. And I think we just need to admit it that Delaney Walker's not wrong. Now, is Delaney Walker going to the Super Bowl? To the Hall of Fame if he's the backup tight end on a 49er team that wins the Super Bowl? No. But I understand the point he's making, and I just don't understand how people can be upset about it. I don't.
I do understand how people can be upset about it. I personally wouldn't be if I was a Titans fan.
Well, I can understand that you'd be upset about it if you were soft.
Okay, don't call Titans fans soft.
I'm not calling Titans fans soft. I don't think most Titans fans are upset about that. I think this is that loud Twitter minority that's like, how dare you? And then you see Twitter and you're like, oh my God, Twitter's mad. And then once you realize that Twitter's really not all that important, I think if we were to poll 100% of Titan fans, that 2 out of 10 would be upset about it.
Well, and I get it.
So I'm calling
the
20% soft.
Okay, the 20% who are offended by this or whatever number it may be, I understand why they feel upset about this because they feel like it's a personal attack on the city where they live and the team that they love, and this team doesn't get enough respect, and this is just a continuation of that. And Delaney Walker played in Tennessee. How could he say that about the Titans? He was one of our own. I understand where they're coming from, but I think that we, as sports media members, look at this in a very analytical way. You take your emotions out of it and say, yeah, when you look at it, the Titans don't get primetime games. The Titans haven't won a Super Bowl. The Titans aren't a sexy team to talk about on the national level. So, yeah, I mean, like, he's got a point. He's not wrong. I don't think that he was intentionally trying to diss Nashville or diss the Titans or be rude in any way, but that's just, I got to agree with him, but I understand why people are upset. I would not be, but I understand it.
So the other thing, too, is about the Hall of Fame. Joe Rexrode said something just absolutely absurd today, and he was talking about, again, the argument for Delaney Walker about getting in the Hall of Fame, about where you played and how that matters. And Max, if you could, here's what Joe Rexrode had to say this morning about his opinion on the idea that it doesn't matter where you play.
Like, I disagree with Delaney Walker saying it's sad that the ring would have something to do with your individual, but why is it sad? I think it's not. I think it's the point. Isn't the point to win?
Well, it's not sad, but it should not be everything. And it's not everything, but I do think there are some times where it's it's a little bit too much slanted towards, this guy won a Super Bowl.
That's
and
fine.
This guy did.
But that's still a different discussion than market, right?
Sure.
I can buy that. Again, like even when you go to the NBA, Charles Barkley, I think as time goes on, as much as we all love him on the greatest TV show ever on television,
and love how Shaq takes a shot at him every time.
Yeah. I think as time goes on, I think he's not respected enough as a player. He was one of the greatest players I've ever seen. And it's the ring thing now, which is fun when Shaq rips on him for that, right? But like the fact that is so held against him, it's a little bit over. But to me, it's still, these are team sports, and so that should mean a lot. Maybe not as much as it does, but I completely reject. I played in this city with this fan base or this market, and that's why I don't have this. I just don't buy that for anyone, good or bad. Good market, bad market. They are dissected down to every carry of their career.
How could you feel that way? How could you say it doesn't matter? And this is the example I always use. When the Indianapolis Colts had Peyton Manning and they were rolling, Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Marcus Pollard, Dallas Clark, Edgerrin James, for his career, 4 Pro Bowls, 1 Super Bowl, 12,000-plus yards, 80 touchdowns. Corey Dillon, who made 3 Super Bowls in Cincinnati, one at the end of his career with the Patriots, who also won a Super Bowl, but spent most of his years in which he was really dominating in the NFL in little-known Cincinnati, 11,000-plus yards, 82 touchdowns. What's the difference between Edgerrin James, who's in the Hall of Fame, and Corey Dillon, who is not? And the answer to me is that Edgerrin James was winning his rushing title when he was on the Colts in prime time with a star quarterback, and everybody saw it every week. Corey Dillon, when he got on TV, was a complimentary player on a team with Tom Brady, but that most of his great years were on a just horrendous Bengals team that he was the only guy worth a damn. And so you can't tell me it doesn't matter where you played. I will not believe that. I will never believe that where you played doesn't matter. Now, in some cases, it won't matter. Michael Jordan could have played in Beirut, and he would have been a great player. Just like LeBron played in Cleveland, and it doesn't mean that we didn't pay attention. But those are for the no-doubters. I'm talking about the other guys in the sports. It does help that Derek Jeter did all of his postseason magic with the Yankees. Did help a little bit. Mariano Rivera, great closer with the Yankees. Doesn't hurt.
Have you ever heard the name Malik Willis?
No.
He rushed for over 100 yards.
Now, did he play like with leather helmets and stuff like that? Or
No, he is a current quarterback in college football.
Okay.
He rushed for more than 100 yards in 3 games last year and nearly won 100 yards in several other games. He lost 1 game last year. He's the quarterback for Liberty. I think Malik Willis was one of the best college quarterbacks in college football last year. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows his name because he plays for Liberty. And of course, college has a different argument than the NFL of competition. And he probably faced a lot easier defenses than you would in the SEC or in the Big 12 or whatever. I guess not Big 12, Big 10. But Bo Nix, you hear that name. Mm-hmm. Bo Nix is a trash quarterback, but he plays for Auburn because he plays against LSU and Texas A&M and Alabama on a yearly basis. So yes, I absolutely do think that it matters in every sport.
In 1994, there were 4 finalists for the Heisman Trophy: Rashaan Salam from Colorado, Kajana Carter, Penn State, Kerry Collins, Penn State. Those guys deserved it. Steve McNair from Alcorn State was there. Mm. Anybody who I've talked to that watched Steve McNair play at Alcorn, we talked to Les Steckel last week, and he was like, oh, my God, that guy was – there was a Sports Illustrated article that said, hand him the Heisman on the cover with a picture of Steve McNair, and he didn't win it because he played at Alcorn State. People thought the Oilers were crazy because he played at Alcorn State. I mean, to say that it doesn't matter, I mean, if you're transcendent, if you're LeBron James, it doesn't matter where you played. But if you're not transcendent, where there is a level for the Hall of Fame that is below that, I think it does kind of matter where you play. I think it does. I think it matters. I mean, again, Chipper Jones is a transcendent player. He gets in the Hall of Fame no matter what. If Andrew Jones is on the Yankees or if Dale Murphy is on the Red Sox, those guys are probably in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I just vehemently disagree with it. I don't have any problem with what Delaney Walker said. I don't have any problem whatsoever. Let's get to your phones. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caroline, what do we have on the text line?
Heidi from Dixon texted in and said Delaney could have tried to be as rude as possible and he would have still been correct about Nashville. People need to toughen up their nerves a lot.
So I almost don't even think it's as much about Nashville as much as it is that when the Titans win, they win boringly. That's a word, right?
No, but go for it.
They win boring.
They win in a boring way.
They want to run the ball, and not that they play good defense, but they want to play they're efficient. They always have been. Look at McNair's stats. Compare them to Peyton's stats the year they shared the MVP. They were not close. They win in very boring fashion, and that does not get eyeballs to the TV, and they want eyeballs to the TV. So they're going to go ahead and put eyeballs on the TV. Okay. What's next?
Well, kind of to this texter's point, this texter texts in and says, here's a dumb question. I don't think it's a dumb question. How does a Sunday night game help the Titans? Is it just respect? No. Like
More
you
people
said,
watch
it's
Sunday Night
eyeballs.
Football.
It's eyeballs. People don't care about the noon game or the midday games or a Thursday night game. The prime time NFL game, people care about. And since people care about it, people care about you because you're important.
Do you know what the number one show on television is every year?
Hannity.
No. No. Hannity gets embarrassed by a football game. Like Hannity's program does like 3 million people a day. Like the NFL, like I think they put out a list of, this was like 2019, the top 50 broadcasted programs, and like 38 of the first 39 were NFL games, and the one that wasn't was like the Democratic presidential debate. Like that's it. I mean, the number one show in all of primetime on TV every year is Sunday Night Football. Do you know what the second most popular show is?
Monday Night Football?
Nope.
I do not.
Thursday Night Football.
Okay.
You know what the third most popular show is in primetime?
Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football. And then finally, I don't think it's on anymore, but The Big Bang Theory is somewhere like after that.
What in the world?
So, again, and The Bachelor, and then that stuff goes out. That's why Sunday Night Football is important. It's the number one television show in America. That's why it's important. That's why Aaron's on it, and Russell's on it, and Brady's on it, and these guys are all. When I was stunned, I figured if the Titans got a Sunday night game, it was going to be Kansas City at home because they'll put him on TV. Mm-hmm. There was one year in 2016 where the Titans, it looked like the end of the season was going to come down to the Titans and the Texans, winner take all for the division. And I remember just thinking, oh, God, if we could just get Sunday Night Football, oh, my goodness. And Brock Osweiler got benched for Tom Savage. And Floyd turned to me and he said, we're not getting Sunday Night Football. I said, what you mean? He goes, I think if Osweiler was in there and it was a winner-take-all game for the playoffs, they could talk themselves into putting Mariota on TV. It's okay, second overall pick a couple years ago. He's had good. They're not putting Tom Savage and Marcus Mariota on TV. And then before the Titans had lost to Jacksonville, which knocked them out of the playoff race, mm-hmm. It was not announced, but it was reported that NBC was going with Packers-Lions. Even though both teams were in the playoffs, the only thing that mattered about that game was who won the division. So the winner of that game wins the division. The loser of that game is a wild card. That's the only thing that matters in that. Not a win and you're in. And NBC was already going with that game. With Aaron and Stafford, two guys that are already in the playoffs, but they're going with that game instead of the Titans. And Sunday Night Football matters. I mean, Dak will be on Sunday Night Football every year. I bet I would love to pull up the Sunday night schedule. Because I bet you the Sunday night schedule is Dallas, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Dallas, Tampa Bay, the Eagles, trying to think of other famous franchises that are good right now. Seattle, San Francisco. It wouldn't surprise me if Dallas has a game, or Denver has a game in there. You're not going to see, just telling you, you're not going to see the Miami Dolphins or the Houston Texans this year on Sunday Night Football.
Week 1, Bears at Rams. Week 2,
Okay,
Chiefs
so Chicago,
at Ravens.
Chiefs.
Week 3, Packers at 49ers.
Okay.
Week 4, Brady at Patriots. Week 5, Bills at Chiefs. Week 6, Seahawks at Steelers. Week 7, Colts at 49ers. Week 8, there's your Cowboys, Vikings. And then week 9, there is Titans, Rams. And you got Chiefs, Raiders. Raiders? It's just because the Chiefs are in
Chiefs. I mean, that's...
Steelers, Chargers, Browns, Ravens, 49ers, Seahawks, Bears, Packers, Saints, Bucks, and Washington football team at Cowboys.
And again, Washington. No one wants to watch them. But they're playing the Cowboys.
Playing the Cowboys.
Playing the Cowboys.
In Dallas.
Playing the Cowboys. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Headlines with Caroline's next. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're driven and delivered by TriStar Moving. Stillman and Company. ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds Baseball. I went to the game against Louisville the other day. I did.
Did you have fun?
I did. I went on the radio in Louisville and called a couple innings, and I was like, I haven't even been on with the Sounds. My own town, my own station has the rights to the Sounds. I've never done an inning with the Sounds. I'll do it.
Well, I hope that you blew them away in Louisville, and maybe you get your opportunity.
I'm pretty good. Tune into Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9. The Sounds begin a 6-game road series against the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. Goodness gracious. Nashville Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by 312 Pizza Company.
I love minor league baseball team
I
games.
don't. I hate that stuff.
Why?
Because
we're so not fun.
Could you imagine being on the Baby Cakes?
I love the Baby Cakes. I have a Baby Cakes t-shirt.
nuts. Nuts. That's no. Like, let's bring like some seriousness to the ballpark, please.
Oh, well, have fun.
Let's bring some seriousness.
I used to go to Hartford Yard Goat games all the time when I lived in Connecticut. They have live goats there. It's a great time at Dunkin' Donuts Park in Hartford, Connecticut. I feel the stare going through me.
Time for headlines with Carol.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman and Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Breaking news to Headlines with Caroline. Apparently the New Orleans baby cakes no longer exist.
Since when?
I don't know. Max just said it.
Since when? I know people in New Orleans really don't like the name baby cakes.
Because it's stupid?
Well, people in New Orleans think it's stupid because it was made up with by somebody who doesn't really know anything about New Orleans. They're like, okay, we get it. Mardi Gras. We understand. They want the Zephyrs back. But
because it's stupid?
The Savannah Bananas. That's fun.
Oh, yes.
The Corpus Christi fish hooks.
The Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp.
That's a good time.
Gracious. What do we got?
So today is day one of SEC Media Days, and Greg Sankey, the commissioner for the SEC, kicked everything off kind of as a recap for this past season and kind of a preview, talking about NIL, talking about COVID, talking about the way that the SEC handled the COVID season last year. And he said that because he announced that games will not be rescheduled this fall due to COVID. So if there's one team that has a COVID outbreak, they are not going to reschedule it. That game is forfeit. And if you do not play enough games, if COVID continues to be an issue within your program and you don't play enough games, then your season's over. Sorry. So Greg Sankey making it very clear that the SEC has no tolerance for rescheduling games, COVID outbreaks, whatever it may be. And he did mention that 6 of the 14 SEC teams have reached the 80% vaccination threshold. That's not a lot.
No, it's not. And I think the SEC states are really struggling, from what I've been told, with the vaccination stuff. And the chief medical officer, who I think ran the SEC's task force last year, I think she's a doctor out of Baton Rouge. And she basically told the people of Louisiana, if you don't get the shot, it's going to be really bad.
Yeah.
And they're struggling there. I think, Greg Sankey is telling you everything that everybody at NC State was told before the College World Series, which is get the shot or else. And I don't think anybody should be more thrilled about that than Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, because
we know they're 100%. You can't be a student at Vanderbilt if you're not vaccinated.
You cannot be on that campus if you're not vaccinated. So his entire team's going to be vaccinated. This is never going to be a problem for them. But could you imagine if they're getting ready to play Florida and Florida has to forfeit a game? I mean, I know Clark Lee doesn't want to win that way. But can you imagine if Vanderbilt all of a sudden racks up 3 SEC wins because the schools in the conference can't get vaccinated?
And Florida doesn't want to lose that way because it's going to be a two-headed race in the East between Georgia and Florida can't afford to lose any games that they can't at least battle out on the field against Vanderbilt. No offense to Vanderbilt fans, but I'm sure Florida fans are looking at that game like a win.
I think you're going to see, once the kids get back on campus for practice, I think you're going to see a bunch of shots. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I mean, I've been doing some more talking to doctors. Not the idea of Googling whatever you want to read about the vaccine. I've been doing more talking to doctors about this and the concerns. I'll give you an example. I talked to a doctor over the weekend who works in the COVID ICU, and there was a guy in there who was, it could go either way. 31-year-old fit guy.
It's unfortunate.
Apparently, this Delta variant is like a bad mamma jamma. The stock market's down 900 points today because of it. And I guess this guy was in there, he was fit, and the guy just would not. The guy would listen to anything the doctor said because he thought he was going to die. And once they got him on the right path, a bunch of oxygen and therapeutics and all kinds of stuff, the doctor is discharging him, and the doctor says, you need to get the shot. And he goes, well, my wife and I want to have a baby, so we're not going to get the shot. And my buddy the doctor says, well, there's no proof that says that getting the shot would keep you from having a baby. And he's like, yeah, but I think we'll be okay. But I think, if you die, you have a 0% chance of having a baby. So
True.
but isn't that the reality? But that's where we're going with this. And as I said, I think it's for the coaches to get through to the players to say, hey, you got to get this for the best interest of the team and deep down inside for the best interest of you.
And you don't want to be that person who is the reason why your team no longer has a shot at getting to the conference championship, getting in a national championship conversation because you had a COVID outbreak on your team.
Absolutely. What's next?
Luke Prokop, he is a 19-year-old Predators prospect, came out today as gay. He's the first player with an NHL contract, retired, active in the history of the NHL, to come out as gay. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman put out a statement. The Predators put out a statement, all supporting Luke. And Prokop told ESPN Assistant General Manager Brian Poyle. Prokop said this about Brian Poyle. He, in that moment, showed me a lot of support because Prokop came out to the Predators before he came out publicly, and he talked to the higher-ups and said, he told me the Predators are behind me 1,000% and what's best for me and that they're proud of me during this. I remember getting off that phone call and tears just started coming out of my face. I was so excited. And in that moment, I thought that is what it's going to feel like for the rest of my life. For them to show that support that they did in that moment, it felt like I can rule the world. So really cool. Proud of the Predators for being so supportive of Luke in him coming out as gay. First NHL player ever.
I tweeted this out today. I said, good for him, good for the Preds. And I mean that. I mean, I think it's... Look, I have no bad feeling whatsoever. I don't think most people do anymore. Like, I think that, like, gay marriage, gay people is now very widely accepted.
Of course.
As it should be. And I'm happy that the Predators are behind this guy. And I think everybody's pretty much behind it. But I'll say this. When it comes to hockey, when it comes to assessment of should he be on the roster, should he spend a year in Milwaukee, should they trade him, should they cut him, should they... that, to me, is not part of the equation.
This is all separate.
Right. It's totally separate, but I do understand probably the pain that he went through, not telling people.
Yes.
And probably the joy that he feels. And I am also completely aware of the precedent that it probably sets for other people. And so I think it is a fantastic moment. Now, as far as he's concerned and what it means for us and what it means for us, discussing the Predators or his position, that is completely separate from that. But good for him, good for the team, and good for the league.
Yeah, absolutely. ESPN announced today as well that Peyton Manning and Eli Manning will be headlining 10 games each season, the 2021, 22, and 23 NFL seasons. They are partnering with Peyton Manning Omaha Productions, his media group, to do this. And this is kind of a big deal because Peyton Manning has been in talks to be in the broadcast booth ever since he retired, and he never really landed in that one spot, so a huge get for ESPN.
I think that ESPN's going to realize how much money they're going to have to cough out to get paid.
Yes.
I mean, this is not... I think you're looking at $30 million a year if you want Peyton in the broadcast booth.
And this is an alternate telecast.
Yes.
I want to establish that they will not be the headliners for Monday Night Football. And ESPN2, they'll have an alternate telecast of the game in which Peyton Manning and Eli Manning will be at the head of.
They can't sell Monday Night Football to his production company. Like they can't. They cannot do that.
No.
So I think they want Peyton in the booth. I think this is kind of their way of seeing if he'll like it to them. But I think this is kind of Peyton going to go out there and have fun with it. And I think Peyton's also making his brother some money because Cooper's on that college quiz bowl thing where Cooper doesn't do anything. And now Eli's doing this.
He is the wonderful host.
So
Eli's also an intern, sort of, for the Giants.
Well, isn't he like the director of like fan
engagement and just basically,
here's $200,000 to Glad Hand.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to be doing. So, I don't know. It should be interesting. There you go. Those are headlines with Caroline. Coming up next, SEC Media Days. We have not forgotten about them. Chase McCabe is live in Hoover. We'll break down some of the big stories from SEC Media Days. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, SEC Media Days going on today. The opener, Greg Sankey, Florida going as well. LSU going, your squad, Carolina. And South Carolina, who, no offense, nobody really cares about South Carolina.
It's a rebuilding year.
It's always a rebuilding year. 102.5 The Game's coverage of SEC Media Days is brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, your equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, and hose fitting seals, packing, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Chase McCabe, meanwhile, is down in Hoover telling us what's the latest. Chase?
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. That's right. I am here on Radio Row at SEC Media Days 21. It is good to be back at the Hyatt Regency, the Windfree Hotel here in Hoover. All of our coverage is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. And things got underway with Commissioner Greg Sankey, his annual State of the SEC address earlier today, and a lot of different topics that he had in his speech. But he picked the theme of Bob Dylan's song, Times They Are A-Changing, which he weaved in and out of the whole address, but especially talking about the last 15 months with COVID, social issues, and the ever-changing landscape of college sports as a whole. The commissioner also took time to say that COVID-19 vaccines were widely available and that it can help avoid, obviously, the health risks that come with COVID-19, but also maximize the chances of a normal college football season. This was another theme that he hit on several times, and he went on to comment on the expectation of all of the schools playing a full schedule.
We still have roster minimums that exist, just like last year. What I've identified for consideration among our membership is we remove those roster minimums, and you're expected to play as scheduled. That means your team needs to be healthy to compete. And if not, that game won't be rescheduled. And thus, to dispose of the game, the forfeit word comes up at this point. That's not a policy, and what you see are the bookends now for decision making. We've not built in the kind of time we did last year, particularly at the end of the season, to accommodate disruption. And unless we're going to do that, our teams are going to have to be fully prepared to play their season as scheduled, which is why embedded in my remarks is the vaccination motivation.
As you all can imagine, the economics of college sports also came up several times during the commissioner's address and also with the head coaches that took to the podium today. He brought up several times he feels that there should be federal involvement to help regulate name, image, and likeness and other economic issues when it comes to college sports. He was asked about it several times, but kept going back to that point that he would like to see Congress have some sort of policy that will help the schools, the student athletes, the conferences, everybody involved. LSU head coach Ed Orgeron gave his thoughts on name, image, and likeness as well.
First of all, I'm for it. Whatever we can give to our players legally, I think they deserve it. We hired an outside firm to give us some advice on how to handle this stuff. A lot of our guys have taken the business on their own and done a very good job. I just know this, that, a lot of players, I think they're going to get a lot of stuff. Obviously, in the real world, it's not like that. You got to go out and compete. But I do hope that when we get to the locker room, the focus is on football. And I think that's where we got to bring the focus back. When it's time to focus on NIL stuff, focus on NIL stuff. When it's time to focus on football and academics, focus on football and academics. And that's what I'm going to talk about.
So we've hit on COVID. We've hit on NIL. Now how about the proposed college football playoff expansion? That, of course, came up. The general thought is everyone knew it was going to happen. It's not that big of a surprise. And Florida coach Dan Mullen was one of them.
Is what it is. I could pull in my inner Jurgen Klopp, right, and say, I'm just here coaching the football team. There's somebody else's job. That's like the commissioners and presidents' jobs, and I'm just going to coach up the team and get them ready to play. The current format's working pretty good. I think inevitably it's going to go to that. And if you would have told me once you started the playoff system, it wasn't going to go back. I loved it. I'm a traditionalist. I love the old bowl system. At one point they were like, oh, well, what if there were two national champions? I mean, boy, I've won 2 of them. What an unbelievable experience it is for young people. They are still supposed to be student athletes in some way, sense, or form of growing young men, getting this experience and an education. What a heck of a deal and an experience that is to change your life for the rest of your life. But once they started the playoff, you knew it was just going to go in a different direction, college football, inevitably. And so it's just going to be a matter of time.
Shane Beamer from South Carolina also hitting the podium today, but tomorrow Kirby Smart, the head coach at Georgia, he'll kick off day 2 at 9 o'clock. But everyone from our state, as you know, is going to be looking at Tennessee football coach Josh Heupel. He will make his SEC Media Days debut when he hits the podium at 10:30 at the main podium. Players Velus Jones Jr. and Alante Taylor will be with their new head coach here at SEC Media Days. Also on tap, Kentucky and Ole Miss. So a loaded day 2 coming your way. All of our coverage here in Hoover is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, and hose fittings, seals, packing joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. That's Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Chase McCabe reporting here from Hoover at the Hyatt Regency Winfrey Hotel for SEC Media Days 21. Let's send it back to Caroline and you too, Jared.
Thanks, Chase. Chase, of course, there with Volunteer Hose and Gasket. So I'm going to ask you about LSU. Are you drinking the Kool-Aid this year?
Well, first and foremost, yes, I always drink the Kool-Aid. But I will say, as a sports fan,
but you don't stupidly drink the Kool-Aid.
No, I'm a very much so take everything with a grain of salt, look at everything kind of with a glass half empty. I'm kind of a, like, I don't watch games with a lot of passion. I just kind of like would rather just watch a game by myself. I don't jump up and down. So I would say I'm a realist and an optimist at the same time. You know, I hope for the best, but I'll expect the worst.
Oh, I'm the opposite. Like, people have told me, like, oh, yeah, we should watch a Titans game together. So I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, no,
I don't think so. I think there are some things to me that are just off limits. Like watching Titans games with fans. And it's not like the sense of like, I'm above the fans kind of like, it's not that. It's like, you think I'm bad, gosh, 23 hours after the game is over on a Titan Monday, you think I'm bad. Mm-hmm. Imagine what I'm like when someone gets a penalty and I don't understand. Oh my God, I could not. Boy, I think Ed O got that. I think the stars just aligned for LSU in 2019. Like, I just think everything was just the right makeup of the quarterback, the right coordinators, the right situation with Alabama, and I just, we'll see.
I'll say this about Ed Orgeron. He is a wonderful head coach because he can recruit really well, and he is okay with deferring his duties to the coordinators.
That's the coach's coach.
If Ed Orgeron does not have a good coordinator, he's not going to have a good team. He is not good with the X's and O's. He is good at the helm. He is a good leader. He is good at the top, and I think that was ultimately LSU's issue last year was the defensive coordinator was absolutely terrible. And, of course, you lose 99% of your championship team. We just made fun of a rebuilding year, but that's very much so what that was. So I think when LSU, like you said, when you have the right players and the right coordinators, they had the right people behind Coach O, they had the right people on the field, that's when it worked out. Because it's not going to be like Nick Saban. Like you could clear out the entire coaching staff and all of the players and bring someone new and you're still going to have success. That's not what LSU football is.
Speaking of rebuilding, David Poyle told us about competitive rebuilding over the weekend, whatever the hell that is. But coming up next, isn't there a much bigger issue that nobody is really willing to report on except for, I don't know, me? We'll discuss next. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Company. Delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. ESPN 1025 The Game. Big movement from the Predators over the weekend. Boom, trades Ryan Ellis. Boom, leaves Colton Sissons and Calle Yarncroke unprotected so that they can protect Tanner Jeannot. And on they go with whatever the hell a competitive rebuild is that David Poile says they are planning to attempt to make in 2021. Boy, I'll tell you, that last month of the season where they beat a broken Dallas team and a bad Chicago Blackhawks team to earn that last playoff spot, and they got bounced in 6 games, 2 of which they had to win in overtime, they really got them believing. Yes. Okay. Now, I've been very hard on David Poile, and I've been very hard for a lot of reasons. Lately, it seems like every move the team makes can easily be first guessed and then doesn't work out. But I do wonder this. Caroline, you've been here for, 4 months, 5 months maybe? You've been here for 4 or 5 months. Let me ask you a question. I've never asked you this privately, but I guess I'll just ask it publicly. Do you trust that in our working relationship that I have your best interest in mind when I operate this show?
100%.
And I would think that you have my best interest as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why so quickly we've worked very, very well together. Because you believe in me and I believe in you. Now, if I did something to show you that you couldn't trust me, if I chucked, say, Ian or Ryan or Max or Chase or somebody just totally under the bus, would you feel like you could believe in me? Like you could trust me?
Not as much as I did before.
Okay. Let's analyze where the Nashville Predators are right now. We discussed this a little bit on Friday, but one of the worst kept secrets is that there are a handful or more of players on this roster that don't really trust the organization. And when I say the organization, I mean the coach. They don't like John Hines. Victor Arvidsson said to The Athletic last week, I didn't really like the way they used me. I didn't like the penalty kill. I didn't like the fact that I wasn't on the power play. I didn't like, and you can look at that and say, well, maybe Arvidsson needs to play better. In fact, ever since Robert Bortuzzo hit him in St. Louis, Arvidsson has needed to play better. But you can say that for one guy. What do you say when it's more? What do you say when it's part of a team? What do you say when it's almost the whole team? By the way, of all of the things that I have heard about what Predator players didn't like about the organization, one of those things was that Victor Arvidsson didn't play in the playoffs. They thought he should have. David Poile was asked about it after the season, said he was hurt, he couldn't play. Arvidsson told Adam Vingan last week, I could play. Can you trust that guy? Philip Forsberg is eligible to sign an extension with the Predators in 9 days, as is Matthias Ekholm. But remember when Shea Weber signed an extension with the team? They believed in him, and then they traded him to Montreal. Remember when PK Subban was brought in to be the next great player in the organization? They traded him. Remember when Matt Duchene was brought in to save the organization and given a 7-year contract? They unprotected him, and they can't wait to get rid of him. And by the way, they're not going to be able to. Remember when Ryan Johansson signed an 8-year, $64 million contract as the number one center this franchise had lacked for years and years? They didn't protect him. Do you really expect Colton Sissons or Calle Yarncroke to understand when you tell them, well, we really believe in you. We just really like what Tanner Jeannot gave us in 15 games up from the AHL, where he started the season in the ECHL, and we just really believe in him. But we still believe in you. You think they're going to buy that? By the way, I looked at Pred's prospects list from December NHL.com doesn't have Tanner Jeannot in the top 5. Fansided doesn't have Tanner Jeannot in the top 8. Neither was Alexander Carrier, by the way, who they also protected. Ryan Ellis is the associate captain. David Poyle signed Ryan Ellis to an 8-year contract extension, and he said that he wanted Ryan Ellis to play the rest of his career in Nashville. Ryan Ellis at that 6.25, that is now way too much for him. By the way, that was undervalued at the time. It was almost like the Predators got a deal. That's the way people felt about it. They traded him. Adam Vingan reported that Ryan Ellis was angry about the trade because he trusted them. David Poyle said on Saturday, well, he's talked to Roman Josi about it. Yes, the one guy, the one skater in the history of the franchise who has a full no movement clause. Roman can trust them because there's nothing they can do about him. The only guy that they haven't really sold off on was Pekka Rinne, who also had a no movement clause, and they gave away his job last year. It's one thing for one guy to be unhappy. It's one thing for one guy to look at a benching or look at a demotion or look at a trade as a personal attack. And every now and then you just have to look at the guy and say, no, Marcus Mariota, you weren't getting the job done. Not that we ever heard Marcus complain, but nobody looked at Mike Vrabel and thought that it was for lack of chances for Mariota. They understood it. This group, I'm not sure, understands what Poyle and Hines are trying to do. Again, it is the worst kept secret in town that there are a bunch of players that don't like the coach. Remember when Matt Duchene signed? The first interview he did was right here on Jared and the GM. And he told us that meeting with Peter Laviolette is what sealed the deal. Laviolette was gone 6 months later. How do you trust that organization? Again, it's one thing if it's one guy. It's another thing if it's two guys. And if you know the old phrase in sports, lose the team, you have no chance of winning. Remember those lineup questions that we had during the playoffs? Like, why Ben Harper, no disrespect to him, is not very good? Or Eric Goodbranson, no disrespect for him, kind of sucks. Why those guys were in the lineup ahead of Dante Fabro? Remember the question about why Ellie Tolvanen was in and out of the lineup? I've had people tell me that the players wondered the same thing. Remember Matt Duchene trying to jockey with the media for ice time with John Hines? That's not how championship organizations are run. You ever remember in the 2017 playoff run any controversy at all about Peter Laviolette and ice time? I don't. I do wonder if these players trust the organization. And I have a hard time believing that they do. Because when you look at the evidence, it makes it hard for me to think that unless I get everything up front and a no movement clause, that they're not going to ship me off like they've shipped everybody else. Let me ask you this question. And I like Philip Forsberg, and I like Matthias Ekholm. They're both very good players. I think Ekholm is better than Forsberg. I think Forsberg is the need that you have. Would you give them 8-year contracts at this point in their career? Would you give them 8-year contracts with no movement clauses? Probably not. So you need them to sign for something less than maybe somebody else will give them. You think they're going to sign for that? You think they're going to give you a deal on the money like maybe Ryan Ellis did? You think they're going to sign a modified no trade or no movement clause like Matt Duchene did? Probably not. They're probably going to say to David Poyle, we saw what you did to the other guys. We want the big deals. We want the no movement clause. And David can't say anymore, well, I don't do no movement clauses, because he gave one to Roman Josi. So now, are you going to be able to re-sign these guys? Are they for sure going to want to be here after what they've seen? Are they going to want to be on a team that values a fourth-line guy, a replacement-level player who has 15 games in the NHL, that values that performance over Cali Yarncroke, are they going to trust that organization to give them a chance to win a cup again? I have a hard time saying yes. You know me. I've been nice for a while. I said, hey, if I owned the team, I would make a change with David, but I understand why they're not. I get it, but I can't be nice anymore. The faith in the organization on the hockey ops side is eroding every day. Every move they make comes with more questions than there are answers. And then a guy here in Victor Arvidsson leaves, and all of a sudden he's saying, I love the last coaching staff. They were great. They didn't use me right here. They didn't tell the truth after the playoffs were over about my injuries, at least according to him. By the way, this is a Victor Arvidsson who everybody loved everything about for the last 5 years. Think about that. Do you trust him? Do the players trust him? Do you trust the coach and the general manager? When we look at the coaches' lineups in the playoffs and we put our hands to our head and think, why in the world are they sitting Ellie Tolvanen, one of the only skilled forwards they have that got them back into the playoff discussion, and why are they sitting Dante Fabro for Ben Harper? You ever wonder that? And again, how do the players feel? Ryan Ellis is one of our best leaders. Yeah, we shipped him off. Victor Arvidsson is our guy. Yeah, we shipped him off. We can't wait to get rid of Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson. There is some big questions. And I wonder this. Do you really believe that they can rebuild this thing if they're not willing to admit that that's what they're going to have to do? And if you're Forsberg or Ekholm, would you sign? And if you lose Forsberg or Ekholm, then what are you going to do? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, I wonder, do they trust the coach? Do they trust the GM? Should we? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your calls and your texts on this. Plus, competitive rebuilding. David Poyle was asked about, over the weekend, the idea about rebuilding, and he said he doesn't want to rebuild. So I asked him the question about when comes the time where you have to rebuild? And that's where competitive rebuilding came up. What's that mean? Next, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company. We're live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com, right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Boy, they love the Nashville Predators. They are supportive. You see that logo right there on the ice. Big fans of the Tennessee Volunteers as well. Hiller is celebrating Home of the Free all July long with special deals for customers. Get your free grilling must-haves when you make your home improvements. Deals include free Yeti Tundra cooler with the purchase of a new tankless water heater and a free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of a new whole home generator. They also have the free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of select new HVAC systems. So get those grilling must-haves. Their work is backed by the Happy You'll Be or the Service is Free guarantee. These deals are only happening in July. So you need to call my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical ASAP. Hiller, proud supporters of the Preds and the Vols. Happy You'll Be or the service is free, and I know this because they take great care of my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Yeah, David, you said that this is not a rebuild, but at some point, when would you think that a legitimate rebuild would be necessary?
Well, I guess we all have to get our own definitions as to what a rebuild is. I mean, I'm going to do my best to not use that word kind of corrupt in there, but I would like to stay competitive. And by making these changes, not be a team that falls out of making the playoffs or goes to the bottom like some other teams have in this league, and they seem to have been there for a while. I'm pretty bullish the way the second half of the season went, and how our team played and how our younger players played, and juice and goal. So I think there's a lot of things that are really looking good on our team, and for a lot of years. I mean, we are one of the oldest teams in the league. So when Becca retires at 38, or RV and Elliott close to 30, or exactly how old they are, I mean, our average age is going to be going down. And again, I'm just really feeling that we're not that far off. I mean, Cody Glass is a young player that I didn't mention in the last question, and he's, I think, outside of the injury that he had, he would be playing regular in the NHL, and hopefully he can secure a spot next year. So that's a lot of players that I just mentioned that over maybe an 18-month period of time that we're kind of introducing on a full-time basis to our club. So I would like to say competitive rebuild. Let's go with that one.
What does that mean?
It's like one of those buzzwords that I feel like people use all the time just because everyone else uses it, but nobody really knows exactly what it means. Competitive rebuild. Isn't that kind of what every team does always?
Isn't that what you always want to do?
Shouldn't you always be adding assets to your team?
You look at teams that have who have been rebuilt over the years. They're all towards the bottom of the thing. Yeah, but David, do you know how the Chicago Blackhawks got to win 3 cups in a 5-year period, or however long that was? Yeah, they were bad. They got Taves and Kane. You know how the Pittsburgh Penguins won their cups? Yeah, they were bad. They had Sidney Crosby. They had. Do you know the Tampa Bay Lightning got Steven Stamkos? Just think about this for a second. Do you know how the Colorado Avalanche got Nathan McKinnon? Do you know how they got that group? It's not complicated. And I hear him, and I get it, but I just have no faith in this organization. I have no faith in the hockey management of this team. I don't. I don't know how you can. And I go back to the Tanner Jeannot thing. You weren't here, Caroline, but last year, David told us there were going to be big changes, and they wanted to get younger. Mm-hmm. And then what they do, they put the young players on the bench. And they said, no, we're going to run out Nick Cousins and Brad Richardson and Eric Holla, and getting one young player, Yakov Trenin, into the lineup is not getting younger. Putting Dante Fabro on the bench and drafting Eric Goodbranson, who I think has been on 5 clubs in the last 3 years, is not getting younger. It doesn't help you win. Congratulations, Pekka's gone. Now you're younger, so the median age has dipped a little bit. But that doesn't make you a better hockey team. And again, I keep going back to this David Poile thing that I think you're starting to realize. You're starting to see yourself, Caroline, which is you can say one thing that answers that direct question. But then once you start putting all of the little answers together, it never really adds up. It doesn't really add up. You're leaving Sissons and Yarncroke unprotected. Okay, fine. You lose one of those 2 guys, it's not the end of the world. But then why weren't they offered to somebody else at the trade deadline? Why weren't they offered to somebody else before the expansion draft lists were due? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, but to go back to what you said last segment about losing that trust and breaking that trust, hurting that trust, do you not think that that's what David Poile was trying to do at the trade deadline?
Earn
was trying
trust?
To maintain a level of trust with his players and not making them vulnerable at the trade deadline?
This is what I think. I think David Poile knows that he doesn't have a lot of time left, right? I mean, we can ignore it all we want. The man's 72 years old. And at some point, there's going to come a point in time where you are no longer doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think David wants to take every crack at it possible because I think David wants to win the cup for David. And I believe there's doing your job and keeping your job. And I think David is more on the keeping his job front than he is on the doing his job front. I don't think David Poyle forgot how to manage a hockey club. But then I see them do things like protect Chandler Jeannot. And I question, what in the world is he watching that I'm not? I watch him trade a first-round pick for Ryan Hartman. I watch him go all in for Kyle Turris. I watch him. Here's what I can't. And I asked him this question because this is why I asked it. Talking about trust and commitment, right? Like you would say, as we use the relationship that we have,
Mm-hmm.
you would think I'm committed to you, right?
Yes. And I appreciate that.
I wonder how Dante Fabro feels today. Because you used a first-round pick on him. You told him when he was at Boston University, hey, you're our guy. You trade Sam Girard because you believe in Dante Fabro. You then sign Dante Fabro the day he's done with college. You sign Dante Fabro, and you stick him in the playoffs against the Dallas Stars. You trade PK Subban because you say, Dante's our guy. He's a top 4 guy. You start for 2 years. Then all of a sudden you have a bad month, you get injured, you come back, and you're playing Ben Harper and Eric Goodbranson over me? Are you really all that committed to me? I mean, you just shipped off Ryan Ellis. How can you be that committed to me? You're playing Ben Harper over me. Ben Harper sucks. How can you be committed to me? You're Matt Duchene. You spent 3 years chasing after me. 3 years. You tried to trade for me when I was in Colorado. You couldn't, so you were part of a 3-team deal where I got shipped off to Ottawa. You wanted me at the 2019 deadline, but Columbus gave up 2 first-round picks to get me, and then I took less money to sign with you because that's where I wanted to be in 2019. And now you want to get rid of me?
But also, at what point is it not just, okay, you belong to a business that I own and manage. Not own, but I manage. I mean, I think you have to walk a delicate balance there of, yes, you want to gain and maintain the trust of your players, but also, I mean, we're sitting here and saying that we're mad that David Poyle didn't make more moves at the trade deadline, and then now all of a sudden he lost their trust if he wants to offer them up.
It's asset management, but it is not just one. It's not selling stocks where the stock has no attachment to you and you have no attachment to it. So it's not that simple, but I understand what you're saying. But then I also look at us, and I think, how do we trust you? Because you sold us on Duchene.
Mm-hmm.
You said, this guy, I've been going for him for 3 years, and I love him, and I want him, and he sucks. Like, I'm sorry, but for the 2 years he's been here, and I think the Predators are equally as guilty in this as he is, but he sucks. And I'm supposed to trust you now? And Dante Fabro, you told me it was okay to trade Sam Girard because you had Dante Fabro, and you stuck him in the playoffs. And you told me it was okay to trade PK Subban because you had Dante Fabro. And now he can't crack the lineup, and you're trying to tell me you still believe in him? How can I trust you? How can I believe that you can turn my franchise around to go win me some games when I don't understand a single thing you do? It doesn't make any sense. I had one guy suggest to me today, and this actually makes sense. But it was, what if Poyle's just trying to shed as much cap space as possible to go sign a bunch of free agents this offseason and just stick them out there? So that whole youth movement thing is all BS, and he's putting both Sissons and Yarncroke out there so that one of those guys gets taken, so that's $2 million off the books, and Jeannot is a minimum salary guy, and so you don't have to worry about his money, and so you've got, take off $2 more million, and then he'll shave some money somewhere else, and then he'll go out and he'll sign Granlund, and he'll sign like 5 other guys, top of the market guys, and he'll roll them out there. And I'm thinking, David Poyle's not playing chess. Every move that he's made over the last handful of years has been completely telegraphed. The whole thing about the Ellie Tolvanen, oh, we're not going to make a move because we think Ellie Tolvanen is a top 6 forward right now when the guy doesn't crack the lineup for 3 years. That was because they were afraid of getting Jimmy Vesey'd. Like, that's why they did that. So I don't think Poyle is playing chess anymore. I don't even know if he can play checkers anymore. I mean, to me, that's maybe. But do you trust Poyle going out and signing the high free agent guys? Because the last time he gave away a bunch of money and a bunch of contracts, hasn't worked out. So I guess I'm at a point here on the Poyle front where I look at it like there's just no answers anymore. There's nothing other than these like cockamamie water slide mental like, well, if they go and they get this guy and they trade that guy and they go and they like, it doesn't add up. And I just think we as fans deserve better. That's all I'm saying. I think we deserve better. And I think we deserve moves that actually make sense. Because when they traded Shea Weber straight up for PK Subban, that made sense. That was the last good move, the last solid move that he made. If you want to go through lately the good moves they've made, trading for Brian Boyle wasn't a good move. Trading for Ryan Hartman wasn't a good move. Trading Fiala for Granlund probably wasn't a good move. Hiring John Hines probably wasn't a good move. Trading PK Subban probably wasn't a bad move because Subban has totally gone down the toilet since then. But signing Matt Duchene wasn't a good move. I mean, the best I can come up with, the best move that they've made, I can't believe I'm saying this, the best move they've made in the last 3 years might be signing Rocco Grimaldi. That might be their best move.
How did that taste coming out your mouth?
Well, I mean, he sucks.
Rocco Grimaldi does not suck.
If you can't play, you're not good.
Why do you think he cannot play?
Because they will not play him. Because he can't play.
Well, they don't play Dante Fabro either.
Right. And so they're telling me that this guy that they've committed to, now they're saying, oh, no, we don't think he's that good anymore. And then you ask them about it, and they're like, no, we believe in Dante. We believe in Dante, but we played Ben Harper over Dante Fabro. Rocco can't get into the lineup. I mean, Rocco's fine. He's a fine offensive player. He's got no defense to his game. So you can't put him in a bottom 6 role because he can't play defense, and you can't put him in a top 6 role because he's not skilled enough. But outside of that, he probably is the best move that they have made. And that's embarrassing. Like, that's my point. That's where we are with Poyle. And as I said to start the show today, we got to wake up. You know, the 60% of people that in Adam Vingan's poll said David Poyle should have kept his job at the end of the season. How? I mean, we got to wake up. Like, I've told you, before you got here, Caroline, this winter, it was so bad that there would have been no way that they could have done this going forward with him. Like, it was so bad. It was going to be a total teardown job. And then magically they got better. And I think a lot of it had to do with Pekka and Saros. But magically they got better, and they got into the playoffs. And then it's like everything everybody felt just went away. And I've never understood that. And so you have a fan base that was ready to just torch the building. And now it's like, no, it's okay. And I'm sitting here thinking, none of these moves add up. Like, you can't just flip in the wind every day. We love Fabro, we hate Fabro. We love Fabro, we hate Fabro. You can't do it like that. You can't have your top prospects list and invest in your top prospects and your first-round draft picks and then say, hey, I hope we get to see Philip Tomasino next year. We want to get younger, and then not play him. Or have Ellie Tolvanen be what gets you back into this and then not play him. Like, you can't do that, and that's what they're doing, and it's a mess. It is a mess. And as I said, I think it's time for us as fans. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm a fan. I high-five. I yell. I scream. I go to the games. I love it. But it's time for us to ask for accountability. And I don't think this thing with the players, I don't think that's going away. The idea of you love me and then you try to get rid of me. I don't think that's going away. We'll get to your reaction next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
as far as 2 years ago, you traded away PK Subban because of firm beliefs in Dante Fabro and Matt Duchene. Fabro did not play in the playoffs. Duchene has not achieved at the level expected. But do you still have the same level of belief in those two that you did when you committed to both of them?
I think everything is in a different situation. I really feel like Fabro, good discussion after the season in terms of what he's going to have to do in the summer, and is bigger, stronger, a little bit quicker. I think I'm hoping it's a blip in his career. We're showing total faith in him by trading to Ryan Ellis to give Carrier, and Myers, Benning an opportunity to play higher in the lineup than maybe they've ever played before. So Fabro's been a good player all of his life. I would say from a performance standpoint, in terms of expectations or what have you, last year was probably a little bit of a down year. So I'm betting on Dante. On Duchene, I mean, we've had lots of conversations. Whatever gone wrong has gone wrong, and next year we'll start again. And I've talked to him a little bit here, and we're going to talk before the season, and we're going to get on the same page, and we're going to set expectations and goals and all that. It's clearly there for Duchene. It's not an age factor. Is this or that or what have you. It hasn't happened for him or for us, and we both got to do whatever we can to work together to make it happen.
There you go. That was David Poyle saying, hey, I still believe in Fabro. In fact, we traded Ryan Ellis because we believe in Fabro. You buying that?
No.
Okay. Says with Duchene, it's not an age factor. It's not a skill factor. It's all there, and he's got to get it, and we got to get it. Do you buy that?
It's all there. Why haven't we seen it? If it's there, I would like. You say it's there, but he doesn't perform well. So where did it go?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
It's a mystery.
I don't know.
It's an $8 million mystery.
I don't know. And I think we've got to get, I get angry because sometimes I feel like there's a lack of accountability. You know, where you can sell this narrative to people for so long, then it doesn't work out. And you just say, yeah, you know, it hasn't worked out, but it might. No. Life has consequences. Actions have consequences. And in pro sports, that is, you know, job performance. It is a public job. Bud Grant used to always tell Floyd, being a coach in the NFL is the best job in the world when you win. And I understand that. Do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the phones?
To the phones.
Phones we go. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. David is up next on Rocco Grimaldi. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to talk about Grimaldi because if you remember, he was the last Predator this past season who had a hat trick at the end of the season. Nobody else came up to a hat trick. Grimaldi did. And when you talk about his defense, he never let them out of their end of the court. He kept going after them, chasing the puck. I think Grimaldi was really good, and I was really upset because they didn't get him back in the game in the end of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, David, I appreciate your call. You're not the only one who feels that way about Rocco Grimaldi. They don't feel that way. And Rocco does struggle in his own end. I mean, he tries hard, like on a forecheck and things like that, but he is a liability defensively. Now, Rocco did have a hat trick. So there's that. Against Detroit. So there's that. But, I mean, again,
Would you take that away from him?
No, I mean, I think Rocco's fine. Like, if you want to put Rocco on your third line and not play Brad Richardson, fine. I mean, I don't think you're not going to play a physical team with Rocco Grimaldi and have Rocco start busting people's chops. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But I think Rocco's fine. I mean, again, the team doesn't play Rocco and they don't protect Rocco. You know how they feel about Rocco.
Yes.
And as for all the things that I can't stand that they do, that's probably like number 9,000 on my list. Ellie is up next on the Preds. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Ellie.
Looking back at Barry Trotsch's success at these other teams, do you think he covered up for David Poyle over the years and made David Poyle look like a better GM than he truly is? Thank you.
So it's so funny you say that. Do you know what I really believe? I believe Floyd Reese made Jeff Fisher a better coach, And I believe Barry Trotz and Peter Laviolette made David Poyle a better general manager. And I think Pekka Rinne made David Poyle a better general manager as well. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. When Floyd was the general manager of the Titans, everybody considered Jeff Fisher to be a good coach. And I remember as a kid, every year the Titans hit a rough patch, and people would start talking on talk radio about, what if they fired Jeff Fisher? And the narrative we were spun when I was a kid, was if they fire Jeff Fisher, he'll get a job in 5 seconds. And he did with the Rams. And now he's tied for the all-time losingest coach in the history of the NFL. But when he had Floyd's players, Steve McNair and Eddie George and Javon Curse and Samari Roll and Derek Mason and Frank Wycheck, and when he had those players, he was a pretty good coach. I mean, the fact that Barry Trotz went to Washington and won a Stanley Cup with no support there from ownership or management, and then turned around with Lou Lamoriello in New York and has taken rosters that have had, some nice players on it, but nothing sexy, and gone deep into the playoffs 3 years in a row, makes me think Barry's a pretty good coach. And yes, I do think that David Poyle, I think the first part of the past decade, the 2011, 2012, I think a lot of that was because of Barry and Pekka. And I think a lot of their success of the past decade was because of Pekka. I asked Mark Howard and Caroline the question last week, and I said, do you think that they failed Pekka more so than Pekka failed them by not winning a cup? And I think we're going to see what life's like without Pekka Rinne. Because when you got to the Stanley Cup final, you were the 8th seed in the Western Conference for a reason. You were that team. And he carried you. And the next year, he was the best goalie in the league, and you were the best team in the league. So I certainly think those things go hand in hand. 615-737-1025. We'll hit your text line next. Again, how do we feel about the Predators and the situation they find themselves in? And again, the mystifying decision to put Tanner Jeannot on the expansion draft protection list. I tweeted this out yesterday. I want to know who was the guy in the room that said, they might take Tanner Jeannot, because if I had been in the room and I had heard that, I'd have laughed that guy out of the building.
Well, you just mentioned Rocco Grimaldi saying, the Predators, I've shown you how they feel about Rocco. Sure. He's a third-line guy. He's fine. He's fine. But that's exactly how I feel about Tanner Jeannot. I don't think that there is a crazy divide in talent and potential between Tanner Jeannot and Rocco Grimaldi. Yes, size. Rocco Grimaldi is very undersized. Tanner Jeannot's solid. He's 6-something. But confusing.
615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. We are delivered by TriStar Moving right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. And again, we are live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Let me tell all the fine folks out there, speaking of the Predators, that I think I've done all these. Oh, here you go. Don't miss the Smashville Summer Spectacular, featuring something for everyone in the family, including Preds giveaways, ice making seminars, a job fair, the Nashville Locker Room Sidewalk Sale, photos with the King Clancy Award, won by Pekka Rinne. By the way, the King Clancy Memorial Trophy, won by Pekka Rinne in 2021. And the James Norris Memorial Trophy, won by Roman Josi, and much, much more. The Smashville Summer Spectacular is this Thursday through Sunday at Bridgestone Arena. Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game.
Hey, David, I'm just wondering how difficult was it to actually pull the trigger on trading two vital members of your core that's won you so many games over the last 4 to 5 years?
Not easy. This is, I don't know how I'm supposed to say this, in some I guess, jobs, occupations, the more seniority you get, it's supposed to be easier, but, we were together a long time, and the RV thing the same way. The kind of neat thing with Pekka is, as I said, he went out on his own terms. Doesn't often happen that way. Like I said, always sometimes they want one more year, or you don't treat them right at the end of ice time or what have you. But Pekka's thing was fabulous. I love that. With Harvey and with Ellie, it's it's my job. It's my job. I have to do what I believe is the right thing for our team, and I strongly believe that. You've been hearing me say that, and I think the players knew that I felt this way. I think people they're surprised to get caught off guard as what it might be or what it might happen. But I think it's the right thing to do. But it never gets easy making these trades, because as was said earlier, I mean, we signed Ryan, an 8-year deal, and I would have been happy if we would have gone all 8 years, but it didn't happen that way.
It didn't happen that way because you chose to make it happen not that way, right?
He's the general manager. He makes the decisions.
I mean, okay. All right. Whatever. David Boyle, let's go to your phone. 615-737-1025 SEC Media Days. Tom Hart will join Chase at Hoover. We'll have that coming up, the lead play-by-play voice of the SEC Network. That'll come up in the next hour as well. Let's go to your phones, though. Text line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Caroline Fenton's on that. What do we have?
Someone's ripping you a little bit. Are you ready?
Give it to me.
This texter says, I can't believe how much Jared is contradicting his past takes. He has wanted the organization to move on from RV, LS, and expose Duchesne and Joey to get rid of a contract. Also pumped Hines as a good coach when we made this run last year, now flip-flopping.
So I'm going to address each one of these things.
Okay.
I do want Arvidsson gone. Like, I think that they needed to make that move. I said to you, that's not a surprise move. That was the expected move.
Ellis as well. We both said that. The issue isn't trading.
I'm okay with Ellis being gone. But then you have to look at the decision that was made. They got less. Think about this. They got less in return for each guy than they gave up to acquire Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman. They got less in return for both guys. The Ellis thing that mystifies me is that I had been told all along that teams weren't really going to want to trade until after the expansion draft because of players they were going to have to protect. So when I saw Ellis go to Philadelphia for Felipe Myers and Cody Glass, and I saw Pierre LeBrun and those guys write that it was a bad return, I didn't have any problem with that. Like, I don't have a problem. I think it was Chuck Fletcher, who runs the Flyers, said, they believe that Ellis will age well into his 30s. I don't think Ellis is going to age well as a hockey player. I don't. I think that the Philadelphia Flyers are going to hate this trade because I don't think they're going to like Ellis. But then they protected Felipe Myers, or Philip Myers, or whatever his name is. They protected him, and I'm thinking to myself, so what was the advantage of trading Ellis before the expansion draft? I mean, if a team doesn't have to protect the guy and you can dial a team up on Thursday and say, hey, you don't have to give up a player in order to get him, maybe they'll give you a little bit more. Like, that's what doesn't make sense to me. The narrative of we traded Arvidsson because we had to, because we wouldn't get anything for him in return, that goes out the window when you protect Tanner Jeannot. Now, here's the Hines thing. I think Hines is a good coach as far as motivating guys throughout the season, like getting them to play harder.
He's a great development coach. I think that's why he had so much success on the lower level of hockey coaching.
Well, I think when he can push you more, I think he's okay. I don't think he can put out a lineup. I think that the playoffs, he tried to be the smartest guy in the room and it didn't work. I don't think he's good with the media as far as like working the refs like Rod Brendamore did. I don't think Hines, and again, I think that those lineups in the playoffs were almost criminal. And I have now heard what was reported to be an issue in New Jersey about veteran players and Hines, and I've now heard a lot of the same things since then here. And it concerns me. And I certainly don't think Hines is Barry Trotz or Peter Laviolette. And what was the other thing you said I flip-flopped on?
I will pull it up in just a second.
I'm sorry about that. But, I mean, I hear you. I'm glad Ellis is gone. Don't get me wrong. I am happy Ryan Ellis is gone. I just, other than shedding the cap, which is important, I don't see the benefit you get out of it. And I think that there were more benefits to be had.
Duchesne and Joey's contract, not protecting them at the deadline.
I don't care about protecting them. I don't care about protecting them because they're not going to get taken. I don't know what this idea about that I want their contracts. The team wants the contracts gone. You want the contracts gone. I want the contracts gone. Max, do you want the contracts gone?
I want whatever you want, Jared.
Thank you. So, I mean, like,
he loves that.
I think everybody wanted those contracts off the books. But when they exposed them in the expansion draft, I mean, like, Seattle's not going to take those guys. Like, they're not going to take them. So I don't have any feeling about that one way or another. Now, this idea that Chase floated out there about trading Dante Fabro to get one of those contracts off the books, I think is ridiculous.
No, don't preach about going young and investing in the youth on this roster and then send one away.
Right, or to send a first-round pick away, or
because that again is a young guy.
Sure, or the goalie from Russia or whatever. Like, you can't be doing that.
No,
you cannot do that. So, I mean, yeah, the idea that I'm flip-flopping on Johansson, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I've never committed to either guy. I've never believed it. I never just, like, when they signed him, when they traded for Johansson, I knew they were going to overpay him because he had 2 years until he was up, and they had traded Seth Jones for him, so he could kind of name his price. Like, you couldn't let that guy go into unrestricted free agency. You just couldn't do it. With Duchesne, I said, hey, if you think he's a big boy forward, then go do it. But 19 goals in 100 games is not big boy forward. What's next?
One texter texts in and says, why aren't Preds fans vocal in their displeasure of general manager David Poile? If Poile was the GM in a market like Boston, Montreal, New York, etc., he would have been given the axe a long time ago.
Dude, I don't know.
Well, I think in the beginning, I mean, New York and Montreal and Boston, they have a couple down years and they don't see the franchise going where they want. That's okay. They can afford to tank and get some first round picks, but like greatness is the expectation. I don't think in the beginning ages of the Nashville Predators that they could have afforded down years.
Well, they were tanking down in the beginning years.
Well, tanking in order to get better picks to be better. I don't think the Predators.
Well, I mean, they've torn it.
I mean,
they have torn it apart. I mean, after what was it, 2005? You know, when Paul Kariya had to go and Peter Forsberg had to go and all those guys had to go. I mean, they tore it down to the studs. And what Poile was able to do on some of those teardown jobs, I think was pretty impressive. I would agree. I mean, to be honest with you, I would agree with the texter. And I think and I'm talking about we, the media in Nashville, and I'm not pointing a finger at everybody else. I'm including myself in this, though I am the one that will go out and say it. I think we've got to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror about how we cover this club. Because putting Tanner Jeannot on the protection list is unacceptable. It doesn't make any hockey sense. I bet you there were 30 general managers around the league that spit up their water when they saw that Tanner Jeannot was on the Predators protected list. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you know, Adam was hinting at it when things were bad this year, and Joe Rexrode was hinting at it in his columns when things were bad this year. And then as soon as they turned it around, everybody took hands off. And I just see bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And, you know, I mean, I think there is a sense of maybe lost access that comes with being vocal. I will say this. I mean, we haven't had John Hines or David Poile on this show since, last summer maybe, like before the bubble or right after the bubble or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying that we wouldn't have those guys on, because if they want to come on and defend, you know, themselves, they're totally welcome to. But I'm also not going to give subpar coverage or not how I feel coverage based upon trying to get people to come on my show. We haven't had Vrabel or Robinson on our show in forever. Now, I have no idea what I could have done to upset John Robinson. I have no idea. I mean, if anything, that guy should be wanting to be on this show. But, I mean, I get it. People want to be asked easy questions. I don't do that. But I would agree with the texter, or I would say this. I think we as a media need to probably be harsher sometimes. You know, I mean, I thought Mike Mularkey got a raw deal with how harsh people were on him. And to make the playoffs for the first time in a decade and then get canned. And win a playoff game at Kansas City and get canned. And then we let David Poyle protect Tanner Jeannot. I think it's crazy. I think it's wild. We'll get back into your text. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I do wonder if I'm just the one going crazy on all this. I'll explain that next. Am I the only one that really feels this way about the future of the organization? We'll discuss next. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
From the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk. ESPN 1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. So I am losing my mind over what has now been, 2 of our 3 hours today complaining about the Predators. I mean, just complaining about the management, the hockey management of the Nashville Predators. That I think, as I have said many a time, I think it's time for a new voice. And, you know, as I said earlier today, I feel like I've been nice about this. Last year when they lost in the bubble and the cycle of where this organization was going just felt like it was going down, 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 down. I said on the air that if I owned the team, that I would give David the next year, and if I didn't like the way we were going, then I would make the change. And then when it was obvious in February that I didn't like the way they were going, I said if I owned the team, I would be beginning a search in which I'd be very private about this, very quiet about it, and I would find my next general manager, and I would get that done totally behind closed doors. And the day that the season is over, we would have a press conference announcing David's retirement or whatever David wants to call it. But we would be announcing David's whatever. And then the next day after that, we'd be introducing the GM that I've spent months finding. And I did it with a very low tone. And then after the playoffs were over, I reiterated the same thing. After I thought they completely botched the trade deadline, I said the same thing, that they lost on, a Thursday night? On Friday, we would be celebrating David's career. On Monday, we'd have somebody new. Like, that's how I would have done it. And then I see the trades and the explanations and the narratives, and I have no problem with Arvidsson being traded. I mean, the return they got, I think, is selling low, but okay. I have no problem with Ellis being traded. The return I thought was really low after I read what Pierre Lebrun wrote in The Athletic.
One more time.
Pierre Lebrun.
Thank you.
And then I saw that Philippe Myers.
I believe it is Philippe.
Okay.
We got called out for saying Felipe.
Well, we'll be doing some calling out in that department in a little bit. Philippe Myers ends up getting protected. So you don't really save a protection spot by trading Ellis. And the players you got back, according to everyone, aren't very good. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then they protect a replacement level player with 15 games of experience that even Joe Rexrode himself, who will not go as far as me on criticizing the team, even Joe Rexrode said that he didn't expect to see Tanner Jeannot put on the list. And I get it. And they put him on the list, and I think that's ridiculous. A replacement-level player over a 6-year contributor to your team in Calle Yarncroke. Can anyone explain that one to me? No, you cannot, because it doesn't make any sense. And I get worked up, and I feel like I've been nice about it, but I feel like the truth is that I don't foresee this organization competing at the highest level of the game as we hold them accountable to doing. I don't foresee them doing that anytime soon until a change is made in that department. And yet, I think the reason that I am so into this is because I care so much, not only as a fan and as a radio host and as someone who does demand accountability and does demand, that you put your team in the best position to win. But then I see Adam Vingan run a poll in The Athletic, and 900 Athletic subscribers, 60% of them say, no, we think David Poile should keep his job. And I wonder if I am the crazy one here. If, this is driving me to the point of, because I'm exhausted, right? You want me to cover the team, but I just can't see them competing. They have spent 23 years looking for a high-end forward. They've never found it. 23 years. They just lost the best player in the history of the organization. They're a mess defensively, which was their calling card for forever. And now they've got discontent in the locker room with the coach. I mean, maybe the fans don't know. Maybe they don't know it. Maybe they don't hear it. Maybe they don't believe it. Maybe they don't believe me. I don't know. So now I start to feel like the crazy one for pointing out all of the things that just have been driving me nuts now for months. And again, like I said, Caroline, I think maybe I'm the crazy one here. Maybe this is like your local high school coach, and you just love them, and they should be able to do their job for as long as they want, and way to go. But that's not how I view pro sports. Maybe I'm the crazy one.
Is it an emotional decision or is it a business decision?
For me?
For just saying in general. Because for you, it sounds like it's a business decision because it's a business. But it seems like emotional decisions and business decisions don't necessarily line up.
So you think the Preds are making an emotional decision by keeping Poile?
More so fans. Maybe like the fan perception.
Okay.
I don't feel like I have been here long enough, covered the team long enough to be able to say that David Boyle should lose his job. Do I agree with the decisions that he made over the weekend? No. I think they were bad decisions.
I just get mad
but
about
that's not
this.
my place.
I get mad about what I feel like is sometimes is gaslighting. You know, with some of the narratives that are being put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep using the Arvidsson one as an example because it is front and center.
Mm-hmm.
But there was nobody who has ever watched a game of hockey who would say that Tanner Jeannot is a more valuable player than Victor Arvidsson. Nobody. No. So when
future value is different.
Sure. And you've got to take that into account. But
yes.
These are the same people that valued, that didn't value Alexander Carrier enough to give him a chance in 3 years, and now all of a sudden can't imagine life without him. And I think that's absurd, right? Like, I think it like this. When you draft a guy in the first round, there's no guarantees that guy's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
There are always issues here or there that guy's not going to be successful. But you got to give that guy every chance to prove that what you once believed in is no longer there. Case in point, Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mariota's got to prove to you when you take him second overall that he's not your franchise quarterback. Once Mariota's proven it, now he goes to the sidelines and somebody else goes in. But I don't think that we didn't look at the 238-yard game against Jacksonville and anoint Derrick Henry the greatest running back of all time. Derrick still had to earn that the next week, and then all of a sudden he wins 2 rushing titles in a row, and it's like, Derrick Henry's pretty good.
Because when the sample size is large and you continue to produce,
sure,
that's when you start getting positive labels.
I made this comparison, and that is Calle Yarncroke is a solid player who has been here for a while and always contributed. Hadn't been the best player, but Calle Yarncroke and Colton Sissons have done what they're told, and they've played important roles. Yarncroke has been more important than Sissons, but I could see you going Sissons over Yarncroke. I would compare that to Dennis Kelly, who has been on the Titans, 16, 17, 18, 19, 25 years. 5 years for Kelly, he was the right tackle of the Titans. Or he was on the Titans as the swing tackle, and then last year as the right tackle. Mm-hmm. Kelly was good at right tackle when he came in for an injured Jack Conklin. Kelly was good last year when they asked him to start. He was a solid player. He was never a great player. He was never going to make the Pro Bowl. He was never going to dominate in the NFL. But Conklin missed a lot of games. Kelly played right tackle. Derrick Henry rushed for a lot of yards. Titans won a lot. So Kelly was a solid player. Well, Khalif Raymond had like 5 big catches for the Titans, but they were big. They were down 14-0 against Kansas City. Tannehill threw a bomb to Raymond to get him back in the game. They were up by 7 late against Indianapolis in a gotta-have-it game on the road after Thanksgiving in 2019. Tannehill threw a bomb to Khalif Raymond for a touchdown that ended up sealing the game. They were up 7-0 on the Ravens in the playoffs. Tannehill hit Khalif Raymond for a bomb. They were up 14-0. Lamar Jackson never recovered, and they won that game to get to the AFC Championship game. Khalif Raymond's made some big catches in his career. But nobody thinks that Khalif Raymond is anything more than a practice squad-ish wide receiver. So when the Titans released Dennis Kelly so they could then sign Janoris Jenkins to play corner, or sign Bud Dupree or Danico Autry or a guy like that, I get it. I understand why you're punting on Kelly. You draft Dylan Radins in the second round, and then you spend that money elsewhere. Fine. But if you punted on Kelly to keep Khalif Raymond, I would say you're nuts. I would say that's insane. I would say I couldn't believe it. And that's where I am on this. And that's why, again, there's a difference between I don't understand or I don't agree with it and I don't understand it. And I think that investing in Tanner Jeannot is like investing in Khalif Raymond. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought there was a chance Raymond could be like the 3rd wide receiver of the Titans, 4th wide receiver of the Titans, and be an okay 4th receiver. And he was fine last year. But I never once thought that Khalif Raymond was going to matter. And then the one time where Khalif Raymond had to play, he got bumped by Marcus Peters and Ryan Tannehill threw a season-ending interception. Because he's not that good. That's why he went undrafted out of Holy Cross. That's why he was on the practice squad. That's why he had a one-trick pony, run deep Khalif. That's why he was there. And that's why I don't miss him right now. That's what Tanner Jeannot is. Practice squad, taxi squad, ECHL, AHL, undrafted free agent. That's what he is. And so I see all this, and it gets me worked up. 615-737-1025, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jim in Nolensville, thank you for calling. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, Jared, you're not crazy on your comments on the Preds, and that's why I listen to you, and a lot of fans do too. We want somebody who cares about the team, and I've been a fan since 2005, and Poyle has done a generally good job, but he should step down. He should have stepped down gracefully, maybe after the bubble year. And this year, I was glad when he held on to Granlund and the other two guys, Holla, and I was proud of them down the stretch. They did good in the playoffs, but even after all of that, he should just say, "I've had my run. I'm 72, whatever," and step down, and let's have somebody else evaluate the team. But this ownership won't say anything. And so we're just kind of caught in a nowhere place. And he won't he won't admit mistakes like Dante that needs minor league seasoning if he's going to be even a really good player in the future.
Mm-hmm. Jim, I appreciate your call. I don't disagree. I mean, if I lose my fastball doing the radio, I'm probably not going to be the person that tells me that I'm losing my fastball. I mean, I don't ever want. And I think this is something maybe that why Pekka got out, because he could have played another year. He could have been the backup here. He could have gone somewhere else and played and been a 1A and a 1B at some place and whatever. But, do you want to ruin it, at the end and stay too long? And I certainly worry that, I'll compare Poyle to Jeff Fisher because Jeff Fisher probably should have been fired in 2005. And so, yeah, they got to the playoffs in 07 and 08, but Jeff Fisher, it was embarrassing at the end with Vince Young throwing his pads in the stands and all that. It was bad. And I think the way Jeff Fisher left a lot of bad taste in the mouth of people around here. Seriously. I think that when Jeff Fisher got named to the Ring of Honor last week, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, all right, fine. And then I think, kind of the way he was in L.A., I think that kind of hurt himself too. But I do worry that Poyle had built his legacy, U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer and a guy here that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. I have a lot of respect for what David Poyle's accomplished, absolutely. But I do worry that he is hurting how we will remember him by bad trade, bad signing, bad pick, bad this, bad everything. I do worry it hurts his legacy. We'll get back to your text on it. 615-737-1025. We are live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical is celebrating the home of the free all July long with special deals for customers. Get your free grilling must-haves when you make your home improvements. Deals like a free Yeti Tundra cooler with the purchase of a new tankless water heater, or you can get a free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of a new whole home generator, or that same free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of select new HVAC systems. Hiller's work is backed by the Happy You'll Be or the Services Free guarantee, and I know this because I let Hiller work at my home, and they do fantastic work. I love them. Every time they come out, I know rain, sleet, snow, whatever, Hiller will be here. Again, these deals are only happening in July, so you've got to call as soon as possible. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They're proud supporters of the Preds. You see that logo right there on the ice? And proud supporters of the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Yeah, David, you said that this is not a rebuild, but at some point, when would you think that a legitimate rebuild would be necessary?
Well, I guess we all have to get our own definitions as to what a rebuild is. I mean, I'm going to do my best to not use that word kind of corrupt in there, but I would like to stay competitive. And by making these changes, not be a team that falls out of making the playoffs or goes to the bottom like some other teams have in this league, and they seem to have been there for a while. I'm pretty bullish the way the second half of the season went, and how our team played and how our younger players played, and juice and goal. So I think there's a lot of things that are really looking good on our team, and for a lot of years. I mean, we are one of the oldest teams in the league. So when Pekka retires at 38, or RV and Elliott close to 30, or exactly how old they are, I mean, our average age is going to be going down. And again, I'm just really feeling that we're not that far off. I mean, Cody Glass is a young player that I didn't mention in the last question, and I think outside of the injury that he had, he would be playing regular in the NHL, and hopefully he can secure a spot next year. So that's a lot of players that I just mentioned that over maybe an 18-month period of time that we're kind of introducing on a full-time basis to our club. So I would like to say competitive rebuild. Let's go with that one.
Competitive rebuild from David Poyle. So I just saw something. I am not, and we will get to the phones in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe this. I don't check my phone much during the radio show. Like I am focused on actually doing my job. And so during the break, I was just scrolling through. They're giving Felipe Myers number 6.
Philippe.
Whatever. They're giving him number 6. I cannot believe they're giving away number 6. I mean, I cannot believe. I thought they were going to retire that baby. I mean, wow. They're giving away number 6? Like, I thought 6 and 35. I thought that, like the Titans, for example, have never until 2018 or 2019 or whatever it was, they did not retire Steve McNair and Eddie George's number. But you would have never sniffed a player wearing number 9 or number 27. They're giving away number 6? I mean, to this guy? They're giving away number 6. Like, wow. And again, I mean, I had just made the assumption that they were going to retire Shea Weber's number.
Well, that was the whole conversation when Pekka retired was, okay, Pekka's jersey will be retired. What about Shea Weber? And the overwhelming sentiment was, yeah, sure.
I mean, I thought Shea Weber was for sure. I mean, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even question it. When oh my goodness, this guy? They're giving this guy number 6. Wow. Who makes that? Oh, wow.
If I'm Shea Weber.
If I'm Shea Weber, I'm retiring today. I mean, I'm retiring. And I'm going to smack them with that recapture penalty so far up their rear ends because, wow. So I can't get over that. I mean, that's a whole new topic in and of itself. I mean, they gave away number 6? Wow. I mean,
it's not like the Predators have so many retired numbers that there's nothing left.
I'll say this. When they traded Shea Weber, there are certain things that before you discuss on the air, there are certain things that, you got to talk to management about. Mm-hmm. Like, I think everybody thinks that, Crazy Jared just goes on the radio and says whatever he wants to say every day. And for the most part, that's kind of true. But there are certain things that you got to talk to the bosses about because they need to know before somebody gets mad at them. Because if they get mad at me, they're not coming to me with being mad. They go to them with being mad.
Right.
And I remember our old general manager, I went in her office and I said, look, there was the expansion draft with Vegas coming up in like a year later. And I was like, look, I'm going to make the case that they should leave Shea Weber exposed. And they should let Vegas take that contract and that Weber is no longer the player he once was. And she was like, and I will give her credit and our current general manager because they pretty much give me the freedom to tell it how it is. Mm-hmm. And not everybody, listen to some other people around town and you ain't going to hear that, especially about, the other team. But I told her that, and she said, if you feel that way, then that's fine. I said, I got crushed by the fans. Like, how dare you talk about letting Shea Weber go? And then a week later, they traded Shea Weber. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe they did it. They got P.K. Subban. And I loved P.K. Subban because I covered the Bruins in 2013, the year that P.K. won the Norris in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought P.K. was the bee's knees. I mean, I thought he was the best player in the league. So, or the best defenseman in the league. And, you know, I just thought it was a great trade.
Right.
So I was ecstatic about it. That day, I was doing the mid-morning slot then. Willie was on in the afternoons. And the news broke at 3 o'clock that Shea Weber was being traded. And I remember hearing that Willie was having, a tough time processing because he loved Shea Weber so much, as did the fans, and I'm not knocking Willie. Willie's covered this team since day one. He's the play-by-play voice. I mean, he knows Shea Weber. I mean, Shea Weber was a huge Blue Jays fan. Willie played in the Blue Jays organization. I mean, I think those guys, and Willie was having a real tough time with it. I mean, that's how much Shea Weber was loved. And then to see this guy whose name we don't even know how it's pronounced, and to see him get number 6, wow. That is that's a wow. That is a wow. You think the Titans should retire 22?
Yeah.
For sure? Even though it's been 3 good seasons with Derrick Henry?
Well, I mean, I think that if the Titans win a championship with Derrick Henry as the starting running back, then yes.
That's a high bar, though.
Yes, it is. But also, I think that retiring a number is a huge honor that you don't just throw away to anyone. And I'm not saying that Derrick Henry is just anyone, but I think that you could totally make the argument that 22 should be retired, yeah.
I mean, I think you can make the argument for Derrick Henry at 22. I don't.
I mean, he's the most successful. He's the biggest name on this Titans team right now, and has been for the past couple of years.
I have been fine with everybody whose number they haven't retired. I have been fine with, not retiring Frank Wycheck's number, not retiring Derek Mason, Samari Roll, Javon Curse, Keith Bullock. I've been fine with all of those. Blaine Bishop. I've been fine with all of those. Steve and Eddie, that was another story. Their numbers have been retired. And Bruce Matthews wore 74, but obviously he was only here for so long. But I just assumed that they were going to keep Shea Weber's number 6. I am stunned. That is some news that when I saw that, and I was like, Myers will be wearing 6 and Cody Glass will be wearing 8. And I was like, 6? Oh, whoa.
What number was he in Philadelphia?
Myers?
Yeah.
Who cares? I'm
not saying that makes it better.
Michael Jordan could want to come play for the Predators, and if he said, I have to wear 35, I'd be like, no, Michael, you can't wear 35.
Well, yes.
Like Gretzky could unretire, and I would not let him wear 35.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't let Gretzky wear 6. What's the reaction on Twitter? Phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. What's the text line?
Well, these are tweets, and it is, why did nobody tell him he cannot wear 6? No. Shea Weber is number 6. 6 should not still be available.
Wow.
There are some people that are like, hey, whatever, 35 is the only one that should be retired.
Again, my loyalty to Shea Weber, I said let him go to the Vegas in the expansion draft a year before the expansion draft, and I celebrated when they traded him. And even I'm like, wow.
Dang.
I am wow.
Wow.
Number 6?
No one's allowed to wear 6 anymore. Retire 6.
Number 6?
Dang.
I mean, I can't. One of the things that gets me is every year when the Baseball Hall of Fame stuff comes around, and when the Baseball Hall of Fame stuff comes around every year, all the Braves and Braves fans try to make the case for Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame, which I do think there is a case for that when you look at the wins above replacement and all the Gold Gloves and everything else. But my thing is they haven't retired his number.
Mm.
So if he's not good enough to retire your number, I don't want to hear you tell me he should be in the Hall of Fame. Because you retired Dale Murphy's number, he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Like everybody else, Maddox, Clavin, Smoltz, Bobby Cox, Chipper Jones, those guys are all in the Hall of Fame. And you never even thought about letting somebody else wear their numbers. But you're letting other people wear Andrew Jones's number, so that tells me that you don't value him like you value the Hall of Fame guys. Wow. I cannot believe they gave away number 6. Wow.
Dang.
Wow. And I know this. I know Pete Rogers, the equipment manager. I know he didn't make this call. That is not his call.
And it's just weird timing, too, after, Pekka retires, and it was a unanimous decision, or, unanimous thought amongst fans that Pekka Rinne's number would be retired. And there was so much talk about retiring Shea Weber's number recently last week whenever Pekka Rinne retired.
Yeah, I mean,
the timing just feels like icky.
You were...
feels sacrilegious.
Were you in college in 2016?
Yes.
So you were what, like a freshman or sophomore in college?
I was freshman, sophomore year, yeah.
That's when Shea Weber got traded.
Dang.
And wow. And you looked at me when I said they're giving away number 6. You looked at me like I was a little crazy. And then when I said it was Shea Weber's number, I think you did like a 180. Oh, okay, now I got it.
Yes.
Wow. They're giving away number 6. Wow.
Yeah, a texter texts into the phone line and says, at least earn number 6, not get it on day 1 in Nashville.
Wow. Let's just give Tanner Chanot 35. I mean, I just, wow. I mean, look, I think anyone who listens to this show knows that there's probably very little that would keep me from just being absolutely speechless. Wow. And again, it's not my business. I mean, I don't own the team, so it's not my thing to say, how dare they? And I'm not saying that.
And I'm not saying that.
I'll say this. I would not have had the stones to have done that. I would not have, and you know me. I really don't care. Right. I don't care about wrecking a house. I would not have given away Shea Weber's number, and I definitely wouldn't have given away to Philippe Myers. I definitely would not have given it to him.
I do wonder if there was a little bit of pushback in the front office about number 6.
Man.
That couldn't have gone unnoticed.
That is wild. Wild. Joe Rexroad has texted me and said, you thought they were retiring 6? Hot takes all show. I don't think this has been a hot take day. I think this has been telling the truth. When Dan Quinn was the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, they had Tell the Truth Monday because that's when they would look at the film and it'd be like, you can't say you didn't block your guy because clearly the film says,
right.
Tell the Truth Monday. That's what today has been. Tell the Truth Monday. Just tell it like it is. Wow.
Is it a hot take?
No. I mean, I told you, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not telling them what to do. He thinks I'm crazy for thinking that they would retire Shea Weber's number. I mean, everybody only thought it. When you haven't given away the number in, 5 years, doesn't that kind of give you an idea?
I understand that you can't retire a number until that player is retired.
Sure, you can't have the ceremony to honor Shea Weber when he's on the other team.
When he's still playing.
Yeah.
However, at least, have the decency, the respect to Shea Weber to say, hey, I hear you. We want number 6. That's a number that we are thinking about. We're discussions about retiring. Let's pick quite literally any other number other than 35.
Man, what if the Chicago Bulls give away number 23? That might be next.
Is his number not already retired?
No, I'm kidding. It is retired.
Okay,
I think 45. I think 45.
Why don't we
talk
about that enough?
Remember when he came back and wore the 4-5?
Yes.
I think that's retired too. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Chase is down at SEC Media Days. He caught up with the lead voice of the SEC Network, Tom Hart, as we look forward to football season. Or he is catching up with Tom Hart, I guess. We'll check in with Chase next. Stillman and Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. Chase McCabe is hanging out live in Hoover, and he is sitting down right now with SEC Network play-by-play voice Tom Hart as we get set for the college football season.
SEC Media Days coverage rolling right along here at the Winfrey in Hoover, Alabama. It is all presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Chase McCabe here with Tom Hart of ESPN and the SEC Network. All right, we got to start with this because the last time we talked to you, I think you were going through the woods and your phone cutting out and everything, but it was during the College World Series. You were on the mic for all the stuff that happened with NC State and Vanderbilt. Have you ever in your years of play-by-play had to prepare on the fly, I should say, with something like that?
Yes and no. I mean, you always have to be prepared for the unexpected or the unknown, but I think it's a great example of where we are right now in this pandemic, whether it's an endemic or pandemic or whatever. And I say that because we had kind of, from a broadcast perspective, to be perfectly honest, like we'd all kind of let our guard down. Like we over-prepared during MLB season last year. We over-prepared during college football season. We were ready for anything during basketball, whether that be, COVID shutdowns or social media shutdown or social justice shutdowns, whatever it might be. And we all got to Omaha, and we were kind of like, well, that thing's in the rearview mirror. Well, no, it's not. It's not even close. So it's a continuing conversation with teams now, like who's at the threshold, who's below it, what do you need to do to get above it, how are you pushing it within your team. So that story is not over. But as it pertains to NC State, it's a shame that they weren't, I'll phrase it like this, that they weren't better positioned to finish what they had started. But according to some reports, half their team was vaccinated. So if you're going to allow half of your team to put your national championship teams at risk, you're playing with fire, in my opinion. And it's a shame that the coaching staff allowed that the administration allowed that. It's a shame that the players allowed other players to derail their dream in that regard.
I feel like the commissioner in his remarks, he referenced that couldn't see how it all would play out with that. But he made it a point several times to bring up that the schedule is what the schedule is. We're not prepared to do like we did last year. We want to get all the games in. But he mentioned the forfeit word that could come into play if they're unable to get the schedule in. And he also brought up vaccination several times of making sure teams are vaccinated. What did you make of his stance on that and wanting to get the full schedule but not really willing to adjust like they did last year?
Well, whether it's a commissioner saying it or coaches talking to their teams or people talking about it at the NFL level, I think it's pretty simple. If you're in it for the team, then you sometimes have to make decisions that you're uncomfortable with, but you do it because it's a team. So if you're going to be the guy or the guys or the gals that keep your team from achieving a championship goal, then that's a problem, and that becomes a distraction because, as we've learned already, 3 coaches have come through this first day of SEC Media Days. Everyone's going to be asked about it, and if you act surprised or try to be elusive in your answer, you only look uncertain as a leader. I'm waiting for the first coach to stand up there and either admit that their team is below the threshold or they are above the threshold, and that they are either proud to be above the threshold or working to get there. Because you can talk about individual rights, I suppose, but there comes a time when you join a team where you check individual rights at the door. To me, it's pretty simple. So I'm not surprised to hear him say that. You can't continually bend schedules and game times and rules to accommodate those who have not gone through the process of trying to protect those rules and schedules themselves. I'm curious, what we know now is Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball still has the fluidity within their schedule that if Yankees, Red Sox get canceled on a Thursday night, they can play a doubleheader Friday. You don't have that flexibility in college football. So what does that mean? I'm curious to see what that turns into this fall. Will we see a running back playing quarterback because a quarterback room got wiped out? I guess that's possible. Or will we see, as I know some teams have, to put such an emphasis on being part of the team that the threshold is reached and that outbreaks are not only less likely but more importantly less severe if they happen?
Another thing that is coming up and going to be brought up all week is the proposed expansion in the college football playoff. Now, I think we all knew that once they put the college football playoff in place with 4 teams, that it would eventually expand at some point in time. It's talked about every year down here and everywhere else. But potentially going from 4 to 12, I mean, that is quite the jump. I think some of us thought there would be a stair-step program to get to that point. That what I heard today from various coaches is, okay, if it happens, it happens. That's what we have to deal with. But what does that mean for the landscape of college football if and when it does expand to 12?
I'm with you. I was surprised it tripled. You know, you're gonna double it, go to 8. That makes sense. There's room for the conference champions and 3 others. I think it's really hard to predict once it comes about. Like, there's so many unknowns in college football right now. The transfer portal being, to me, the biggest. That's going to change the way coaches are allowed to coach their team, really. Name, image, and likeness brings a whole nother element to it in terms of the on-field. It's good in the respect, in my opinion, that it keeps more fan bases engaged towards the end of the year when you can get into some November doldrums. So more games will be played that have meaning. So I like that. I was surprised still, and I want to ask Greg Sankey about this, that he has fought so hard. And there's an article in Sports Illustrated this week that says he's essentially tired of allowing opportunities to lesser programs and conferences. Like, we're the SEC, we're Division I. Why do we play under the same set of rules that Division II and Division III play under? Which I think is a fair point. Why don't we have communication systems and quarterback helmets? Yeah, it's expensive for Division III school. This isn't Division III. Like, let us do what is within our right to do and what we want to do. All of that being said, how did we get to the point where we were negotiated down to allowing room for programs that may be less deserving? That, to me, is where it gets watered down when you get to 12. If you stick at 8, you got 3 wild cards, however they're decided. Those are going to be, most years, 3 very deserving teams. And if that 8th team isn't especially deserving, well, guess what? They're the perfect can of fodder for the number 1 seed, which deserves an opportunity to play a lesser opponent in the first round.
You bring up name, image, and likeness, and also the transfer portal. You add in the playoff expanding. I'm not saying that college football is becoming the NFL, because it's not, but the line seems to be getting more and more blurred between college athletics and professional athletics, and some of it was unavoidable. But how do you think that the schools, the sanctioning bodies, preserve that amateurism, if you still want to call it that, and the purity of college football?
Well, amateurism and purity are odd words to use at this point, right? I mean, purity, that ship sailed a long time ago, I think. If you want to poke your head into the sausage factory and see how it's made, you're probably not going to enjoy a sausage anymore. Amateurism, to me, that's a real concern from this respect, and I don't want to be misunderstood. I am all for the players getting their piece of the pie. But how college football is consumed and how it is thought of from the fan standpoint, and make no mistake, the fans, they're a stakeholder in this deal, right? If all of a sudden it becomes a more professional environment where a fan sitting in the upper deck at Neyland Stadium screams at the cornerback who just blew coverage, you get paid $50,000 to do this, which in their mind would be a logical assumption if they have a $50,000 deal with Smoothie King. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that it turns the players into professionals. Once again, get all the money you can, but then fans, I think it's inevitable that they start thinking about this game and this whole enterprise differently, and it's less about us, which is the beauty of college football. This is my school. This is our state. These are my guys, and more about them. What are they doing on the field? They blew the coverage. They threw the interception. I don't live in a pie-in-the-sky world. I know that it's the SEC especially is a high-stakes league. But to me, there's a big difference in viewing players as our college players versus professionals.
The SEC being what it is, and it's been the most dominant conference for a long time, but now you have the SEC network that has blown up. We're seeing other conferences follow suit. The new television deal that's going to go into effect, Commissioner Sankey talked about that today, and that obviously affects ESPN. What does the future look like for this conference with all that's being dumped into it?
More of the same, I think, which is a great thing. I mean, the money that is spent on facilities, the money that's spent on players, player well-being, the investment from local markets, from universities, that's not changing anything any at all. So, I think it's still everyone's trying to play catch up for the most part, and with the population shift and the importance of SEC football, I don't see that shifting anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's Tom Hart, SEC Network and ESPN, joining us. Tom, appreciate the time.
Anytime, Chase. Thanks for having me.
Tom Hart, the SEC Network and ESPN, joining us again. All of our coverage brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket here on ESPN 102.5. The Game, Chase McCabe live in Hoover, Alabama, SEC Media Days 2021.
Thank you, Chase, who's out in Hoover with us again. Our coverage presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. And they are our presenting sponsors for SEC Media Days, your equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, hose fittings, seals, packing, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Caroline's is next. Stillman & Company, TriStar Moving, Preds Insiders comes up next. It is time for Caroline's.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Caroline's. Here on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
So first and foremost, we've got Reds, Mets. Give me the Reds on the money line, -115. Right-hander Jared Eichhoff is on the mound, while the Reds, for the Mets, the Reds have Vladimir Gutierrez on the mound. He's got a 4.29 ERA and 9 starts. New York just has a bad bullpen. The Mets struggle on the road. I think the Reds are going to take this one.
All right, give me the Mets.
All right, great. We got Braves, Padres. Give me the Padres on the money line, -165. Padres have Yu Darvish on the mound, and he hasn't been great before the All-Star break, but I kind of see a comeback here against a Braves left-hander Kyle Muller. He's 1-2 with a 3.45
he sucks.
ERA. He's not great. Not great at all. And we also have Indians, Astros. Give me the Astros -1.5, -122. The return on the money line just isn't great. The Indians aren't good. Astros -122 against the spread.
I will take. So you're going to go with the Astros +1 or -1.5?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Indians on the money line.
You cannot take the Indians on the money line when I take the Astros against the spread.
No.
That's not allowed.
Taking the Indians on the money line. I've got one for you, the WNBA.
Okay,
well, wait a
let's
minute,
do
hold
it.
on. They don't play for another month.
Well, okay.
They were done. I guess their last week was last week, so I guess they're out. Let's see.
Would you like to do it a month in advance?
We'll do Vancouver, Houston. They play tomorrow in the MLS. Give me Houston.
All right, give me Vancouver. Give me the Whitecaps.
We'll see how that goes. That's it for us. We're out of here. Preds Insiders recapping everything. Recapping everything from the Predators' decision-making, the Ryan Ellis trade, the protection list. That's next. We're out of here.